Chapter 1068. When Song Howren walked to the ruins of the altar, he saw a faint light in the ruins. He frowned, hurriedly walked over, and lifted the nearby boulder. When did my strength increase again? Song Howren was a little surprised by the strength of his arms. He only felt that his strength seemed to have increased a lot out of nowhere. A boulder that seemed to weigh hundreds of pounds was lifted with one hand. Song Howren frowned. Was it related to the huge arm that suddenly appeared from the badge before he fainted? But he didn't have time to think about it, because after lifting the boulder, Song Howren saw the thing buried under the boulder. It was probably the thing that was originally hidden in the altar. Because the altar was broken, it could see the light of day again. A coffin again, to Song Howren's surprise. After he cleared the surrounding stones, he found that the thing buried in the depths of the altar was actually a stone coffin. The material of the coffin was very strange. It was like a luminous pearl, emitting a faint light. Song Howren smacked his lips, narrowed his eyes, and reached out to slowly open the lid of the coffin. After opening the lid, a woman was hidden in the stone coffin. Song Howren took a look and felt a sense of amazement. The woman lying in the stone coffin looked to be no more than 20 years old. She was wearing ancient, gorgeous clothes, and her beauty could captivate even birds and beasts. Song Howren couldn't help but reveal a trace of absent-mindedness. He walked around the stone coffin, carefully observing the woman in the stone coffin. Song Howren couldn't help but reach out and gently grab the woman's wrist. From the touch of her flesh, the woman seemed to be asleep, but Song Howren couldn't feel her pulse. He reached out to the woman's nose. There was no breath. This stone coffin was not worth hiding in the depths of the altar for so many years. The woman in the stone coffin seemed to be dead, but her body was just like when she was alive. Song Howren had seen the so-called corpses that didn't decay for thousands of years, but most of them were caused by the environment. Although they didn't decay, they became dry corpses, which was completely different from the woman's body. At this time, the bead in the woman's hand caught Song Howren's attention. He curiously took the bead from the woman's hand and carefully looked at it in the palm of his hand. But he couldn't see anything. At this moment, the woman in the sarcophagus moved her finger slightly. Song Howren immediately stood up and looked at the woman in the sarcophagus warily. The woman slowly opened her eyes. There was a trace of panic in her eyes, as if she was looking for something. The bead in Song Howren's hand was her eyes suddenly. The woman suddenly rushed out of the stone coffin and actually tried to grab Song Howren. Song Howren was greatly surprised, but he wasn't afraid. The woman rushed in front of him, but suddenly frowned. Her lips moved slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but her vocal cords probably hadn't been used for a long time, so the sound she made wasn't very pleasant to hear, and the meaning was unclear. The woman took another 2 steps forward with an anxious look on her face. But she suddenly collapsed. Song Howren frowned and saw the woman fell to the ground, motionless. He hesitated for a moment and then walked to the woman and helped her sit up, but found that the woman had already fainted. Why is this woman's body suddenly so cold? The place where he touched felt like he was touching ice. He saw that a thin layer of frost had already formed between the woman's eyebrows. Song Howren thought for a while, and then quickly put the bead back into the woman's hand. Gradually, he felt the woman's body temperature rise a little. Eldest young master, this woman is? A warrior of the Song family, using a submachine gun as a crutch, limped in front of Song Howren. We found her under the altar. Song Howren didn't hide it. I don't know, but let's keep it for now. Also, don't spread the news about this woman. All right, Song Howren asked again. How's the search going? The Song family warrior said 9 died, 16 are seriously injured, and the rest have light injuries. A lot of Suzuki-kai died, and only 10 or so survived. In addition, we found Yuichi Suzuki and Haruxan Suzuki, but they are unconscious. Also, we found a lot of people. There are those who were originally trapped in the crystal. Eldest young master, what should we do? Song Howren quickly said, inform the people outside. We need to transport everyone out of here first. With that, Song Howren directly took off his combat suit, put it on the mysterious woman in his arms, and then carried her up. Let's go. They didn't encounter any danger on the way out. On the way, they collected Mu Xianghua's body, and it took them more than 2 hours to leave the secret passage. Outside, the Li family's troops had already evacuated, and they should be in the town in front of them now. However, the Li family left a few people here to wait. Although the Li family backed out of this cooperation midway, they still left some people here just in case. This was a bit of a business deal, but they still had a sense of righteousness. However, Song Howren had ordered people not to talk about what happened in the tomb, so the Li family's people couldn't ask about it. As for the remaining people of Suzuki Kai, they all kept their mouths shut after the Song family soldiers kindly asked them to. Since eldest young Master Song came out safe and sound, the few of us will go back first. The few old masters of the Li family could only leave at this time, although the Song family and Suzuki Kai people came out with wounds all over their bodies. Their weapons were still the same, and there were more than 10 Song family soldiers guarding outside. Their fighting strength was still there. After seeing the Li family's people leave, Song Howren ordered people to go in and carry out all the people inside. Song Howren walked into the tent alone with a mysterious woman in his arms. Eldest young Master Song naturally didn't want to take advantage of the situation, but he was curious about the mysterious woman's origin. He took the strange bead from the woman's hand several times, and the woman would show a painful expression while unconscious. This woman seemed to be unable to leave this strange bead. It wasn't until dawn that the Song family and Suzuki Kai people moved everyone out of the tomb. At this time, a Song family soldier came and said that Haruxin Suzuki and Yuichi Suzuki had woken up. But after they woke up, they knocked out the Suzuki Kai people guarding them and then fled. You stay here and let 2 people come over to guard the tent. Don't let others in. After Song Howren hurriedly ordered, he went out to check. More than 10 kilometers away, Haruko Suzuki was enduring the murderous gaze of Yuichi Suzuki. At this time, Haruko Suzuki just laughed a few times, then sighed and said, "Brother Lianjun, it's not my fault. Besides, didn't we escape with our lives? At least we escaped from the hands of the remnant soul of an ancient great god. If this gets out, the 2 of us will brag about it for hundreds of years in the demon beast realm." Yuichi Suzuki snorted coldly. So hateful. The source of Greedy Wolf's power was actually in front of me, and I missed it in vain. It was once again absorbed by Zixing's body. After working so hard, I actually didn't get anything. In fact, it's not that we didn't get anything. Haruko Suzuki suddenly said at this time. At least, the mysterious power didn't lie to us. After waking up, Hakata and Lianjun felt that they had become weak again. The feeling of being full of power was gone, but compared to before entering the tomb, it was much better. All of this was just like what the mysterious Almighty said. They would reduce the recovery rate as a reward for escorting them. But obviously, the power left in the body now was less than the value of 70% reduction in the beginning. The reduction ratio was obviously about 80%. Hakata speculated that it might be because some people from the Song family died in the tomb. That mysterious power was really not calculative at all. He calculated it clearly. This stingy guy. But it was precisely because of this that Hakata and Lianjun left immediately after waking up. They didn't believe that if the mysterious power hadn't been secretly watching them, he would be able to restore this part of power for them out of thin air. Don't fool me. Yuichi Suzuki snorted coldly at this time. In the end, you swallowed a part of the divinity of the remnant soul, right? I want half of this divinity. Brother Lianjun, this is what I exchanged with my life. Yuichi Suzuki sneered at this time. You and I live and die together. We share blessings and hardships together, right? What do you want to do? Hakata had a bad premonition at this time. Unexpectedly, this premonition soon became reality. Hakata felt as if half of his soul was being roasted by fire at this time. He was in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat. F*CK, you're so cruel. You actually tortured yourself. Stop. I'll share it with you. You're really a good brother. Yuichi Suzuki sneered at this time. Brother Hakata, remember that it's only half. F***CK. Hakata stared at this guy fiercely, opened his mouth reluctantly, and spat out a shiny golden ball from his mouth, throwing it in front of Lianjun. Lianjun didn't even think and swallowed the thing that Hakata spat out into his mouth. Now, Hakata rubbed his forehead and muttered, if the divinity is not digested, what if it's beaten out by others? Let's find a place to absorb it first. With the protection of this trace of divinity, at least we can guarantee that the will of the world won't find us. We can be considered as half an official. As for that remnant soul, it may have escaped, but it still contains a lot of divinity, which is really attractive. Don't forget about that mysterious, powerful. That part of divinity may have fallen into the hands of that powerful person. Lianjun poured a bucket of cold water on him. Otherwise, will they let us go? Do you really think it's to protect these mortals? Obviously, that powerful person is after this remnant soul. TSK, you're an unambitious salted fish. Hakata snorted coldly. Let's put aside the divinity first. You still want to get back your greedy wolf's origin, right? Now that the whereabouts of your former host is under our control, don't you plan to make a good plan? Lianjun was silent and finally nodded. The two brothers in the same boat gradually disappeared in the forest path illuminated by the sunrise. In a dark cave, the bronze-masked man coughed a few times and then covered his chest with difficulty, trying to sit up. Wang, who was beside him, quickly came over to help him. After getting up, the bronze-masked man shook his head. Don't worry, I'm not dead yet. Wang nodded, turned him over, and sat down alone, hugging his knees, leaning against the wall of the cave. The bronze-masked man glanced at him. When he first found Wang was like this, leaning against the sealed cave behind the dragon's sealing stone, lifeless, silently looking outside. The bronze-masked man sighed and walked to the crystal sarcophagus that had also been moved away by Wang. After a long time, he sighed, maybe this is God's will. Are you going to give up? Wang suddenly looked up. The bronze-masked man shook his head. I've been preparing for so long. Resurrection is just one of the steps. The failure of resurrection doesn't mean the final failure. I just want to let him see the arrival of an era that belongs to us. He slowly closed the crystal sarcophagus and said in a low voice, I asked you to move the people of the Taoist Association and the Monster Association away so that we won't be hindered when we set up the 7 Jade Dragon Pillars. Originally, we had caught them all, but now those Taoist monsters who were originally used as sacrifices have escaped. We need new sacrifices, or the final big circle won't have enough power to support. They already know what you want to do. Wang shook his head. Now, they're not as easy to catch as before when they wanted to snatch the Imperial Edict. The first Jade Dragon Pillar has been set up. If we stop now, all our previous efforts will be in vain. The bronze-masked man looked at Wang. No matter what price I have to pay, I must open the gap of the spiritual chi of the earth. With that, the bronze-masked man sat down with his legs crossed. If he wanted to continue, then he needed to recover as soon as possible. Somewhere in the Penglai treasure house, Taisetsu picked up a stone from the ground. After looking at it for a while, he casually threw it in front of him. In front of him was a stone forest. There were many stalagmites in the middle, but many had already fallen. However, the miraculous thing was that these broken stalagmites were now recovering bit by bit. This stone forest can make people lose their way. Wang Hu glanced at it at this time. He was not very far away from this place. After rushing for a while, he returned to this place again. Boss Luo, you'd better be careful. Luochio nodded, and then curiously looked at the stone forest that was repairing itself. The appearance of this automatic repair was actually quite spectacular, as if time was flowing backward. It should have been self-repairing for a while. Taisetsu walked back at this time, but looking at the current situation, it should have been quite damaged at the beginning. The battle should have been quite fierce. Can you estimate the combat power? Luochio looked at Yu Yi at this time and asked casually. Speaking of which, it has been completed, Master, Yu Yi suddenly said at this time. Luochio curiously asked, Completed? What did you complete? Yi turned her palm, and a pair of ordinary black-rimmed glasses appeared on her palm. Miss Maid whispered, Master, didn't you say before that it would be more convenient if the extraordinary power could be quantified? So I tried to do it. This is the first generation of the finished product. You really made it? Luochio was very curious. He directly put on the glasses like a child. There is a button on the side of the frame. Just press it, Yi said again. After Luochio pressed it, he looked at his maid at first glance. He only heard Miss Maid whispering, take an ordinary adult man as the standard. According to Master, as the base number of 5. As for the measurement, it is the energy value exposed in the body. If equipped with weapons, it will also be added. However, it may not be very accurate, and there's no way to measure all of it for the time being. 56 million. This was the value that Luochio saw Yuye's value. In other words, this is only the value in the normal state, not including the situation after the outburst. Luochio nodded. The specific value will be measured again after the outburst. Yuyi said, this is only the first generation. I will try to make the second generation. Master, please wait. This is already very interesting. Luochio smiled slightly. This was just something he said casually when he was in South America. He didn't expect to really make a finished product, and the finished product was not fancy. Luochio liked it a little when he looked at it. After wearing the black-rimmed glasses, Luochio's scholarly aura seemed to be stronger. Wang Hu was stunned. He didn't understand the conversation between Luochio and Yu Yi. He could only frown. At this time, Luochio glanced at Wang Hu. 3,736,900. He looked at Tai Setsu curiously. 27,691,000. Finally, Luochio stretched out his palm and looked at his palm with the black-rimmed glasses. On the glasses, a small number floated slowly. 5. At least 0. 5 more, right? Luochio comforted himself. Chapter 1069. Although he was curious as to how this 5 was measured, it might have been added by the servant girl on purpose. Anyway, Luochio didn't ask. Being able to see the value of a transcendent would give him an intuitive understanding. Even though this value couldn't really represent the true strength of a transcendent, it was better to treat it as an interesting toy. These guys didn't seem to be nervous at all. Wang Hu frowned inwardly, but didn't say too much. He found this place only to find some information about himself after he fainted from the battle. However, this place had started to repair itself and was empty. There didn't seem to be much information left behind. Wang Hu noted it down and thought about his next move. Should he split up with these 3 guys or act alone? On the way, Luochio casually chatted with Wang Hu. He understood some of the rules of Kelowna from Wang Hu, as well as some local customs. He was quite satisfied. Now it was time to think about this deal. Indeed, since Tai Setsu had brought him here, the next step should be to find the customer, to collect the payment for the deal. The club, or the altar, was very generous when it let Luochio collect the payment. Without any need to buy the customer's information, Luochio had a feeling that he would be able to meet the customer if he went in the right direction. Luochio followed the feeling in his heart and looked in a certain direction. However, Taisetsu suddenly said, "Boss, there seems to be someone there." Everyone looked over. It was a hillside at the edge of the stone forest. A figure slowly walked out from the edge of the hillside. However, that person seemed to be injured. When he reached the edge of the hillside, he actually rolled down from the hillside. The distance wasn't very far, and they could roughly see the person's appearance with pure vision. It seemed to be an old man. At this time, Wang Hu's expression changed slightly. Without saying anything, he went forward and easily reached the bottom of the hill with a few leaps. He caught the old man who had slid down in his hands. Finally, Wang Hu put the old man on the ground and looked at him with a frown. Luochio led the maid and Taisetsu over and asked curiously, "Mr. Wang Hu, do you know this old man?" Wang Hu nodded and said solemnly, "This is the person I told you about before. He's the president of the Kelowna Tao Technique Association, the sect master of Kunlun, the 100 Tribulations Taoist. It's just that, what exactly did he encounter that caused him to be so severely injured?" Luochio looked at the old man, the Hundred Tribulation Taoist. His shirt was gone, and there were many wounds on his naked upper body. Wang Hu frowned and took out a cinnabar fruit from his pocket. He planned to use it during the journey. He peeled it and held it in his hand. The juice of the cinnabar fruit dripped into Hundred Tribulation's Taoist lips and then seeped into his mouth. After that, Wang Hu turned his palm and patted the Hundred Tribulation Taoist chest. After a while, the Hundred Tribulation Taoist frowned slightly and slowly opened his eyes. After opening his eyes, the Hundred Tribulation Taoist looked a little confused. He glanced around, and when he saw Wang Hu, his eyes lit up slightly. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. Wang Hu said, "Hundred Tribulation Taoist, do you recognize me? I'm the guard of the White Tiger, young master, Huang Baifu, Wang Hu." The Hundred Tribulation Taoist coughed twice and seemed to want to sit up. Wang Hu quickly reached out and helped him up. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist then realized that Wang Hu's right arm was gone. A trace of surprise flashed in the Hundred Tribulation Taoist's eyes. He got up just to give himself some time to think. This was not Wang Hu, but the White Tiger young master, Huang Baifu. However, as the saying went, the older the wiser. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist quickly understood what Huang Baifu meant. He didn't want to reveal his identity. Obviously, it had something to do with the young people beside him. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist then looked up and sized up the two men and one woman beside Huang Baifu. Luoqiu and Taisetsu didn't look anything special. They had typical Oriental faces, but when he saw the servant girl, the Hundred Tribulation Taoist's expression changed obviously. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist hadn't left Kelowna for a long time, but he had seen Persians from the Western region. The Central region had never sent people from the Western region. But how did people from the Western region come here? Wang Hu. I remember the little guy beside young Master Huang. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist nodded. He's already so tall. Wang Hu's forehead twitched, and he cursed in his heart that this old man really dared to take advantage of others. President Hundred Tribulation Taoist, now is not the time to reminisce. Let's talk about your situation first. After the transfer, what happened to you? The Hundred Tribulation Taoist pondered for a while, and then looked at Luoqiu and the other two, and asked slowly, "These people are?" "I'm Boss Luo. The other two are his employees." Boss Luo once saved Wang Hu. Wang Hu said casually, "He came here after us." Boss Luo isn't very familiar with the Taoist and monster world. Although the words were simple, it was enough for the Hundred Tribulation Taoist to understand what Huang Baifu wanted to say. The three of them were protected by Huang Bai's talisman. They were new transcendents who came to the divine land by chance. Hundred Tribulation Taoists knew that there were some lucky people who got the cultivation method from the market. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist nodded and then sighed, "This is a long story." Then the Hundred Tribulation Taoist told him about his experience with Song Jin, Shui Ming, and Tu Shan after entering this place. Then they met the terrifying Gaia, and both sides were almost wiped out. Only a few lucky people survived, and the Hundred Tribulation Taoists stayed behind to fight alone. After killing those 6, my old bones couldn't take it anymore. The Hundred Tribulation Taoists sighed. Hundred Tribulation's Taoist sighed and said, "If they hadn't suddenly stopped, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape either." "I didn't expect you to encounter that thing too." Wang Hu sighed. At the same time, he was even more shocked. There was more than one of that thing. What was even more unexpected was that when he was separated, the Kelowna Tao Demon Association suffered a devastating attack, and only a few escaped. Hundred Tribulation Taoist, you risked your life and stayed behind to bury the bodies of my people. Wang Hu took a deep breath. I appreciate your kindness. Although this place is dangerous, don't worry. I'll keep you safe even if I have to sacrifice myself. You're too serious. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist shook his head. Although Huang Baifu was known as the most outstanding descendant of the White Tiger clan in hundreds of years, he was probably on par with the Hundred Tribulation Taoist. Even the Hundred Tribulation Taoist almost lost his life. Taoist priest, can you describe in detail the situation when you encounter the enemy? Luoqiu asked abruptly. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist was stunned, but he didn't refuse. He said they call themselves Gaia, like two halves of the same mold. Their bodies can change shape, their hands can shoot out terrifying energy like cannons, and they have strong close combat ability. Gaia? It was the servant girl from the club who spoke. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist hurriedly said, "Miss, do you know anything about it?" The servant girl said indifferently, "I'm just a little curious about its name." In ancient Greek mythology, Gaia is the god of earth, the mother of all gods, and the first primitive god born from chaos. Taoist, you said it's a battle weapon, but it calls itself Gaia. Of course, I'm curious. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist nodded. I've thought about what you said, but the Western god system is different from the Kelowna system. It's said that in ancient times, the Kelowna god system and the other god systems in the big world had a secret agreement. Each god system ruled their own land and didn't interfere with each other. If this Gaia is really made by a god system outside of Kelowna, it's really worrying. Yu smiled faintly, but it could just be a coincidence. After all, no matter how you put it, Gaia, as Mother Earth, is far from the combat weapon that the Taoists spoke of. Furthermore, Gaia is not the only Mother Earth hypothesis in Western scholarship. There are so many meanings in a name, Daz asked with a confused look at this moment. Yes. Luo Chio smiled slightly at this time. A scientist in the UK once proposed a hypothesis called Gaia hypothesis, that is, a complex system that can interact with each other formed between the world's living and non-living things, or also known as Gaia consciousness. That is, a pure collection of consciousness composed of all living things. Oh, I see. Taisetsu's brain was in a knot, and he asked directly, "Boss, do you still want to eat the cinnabar fruit? Keep it for yourself." Luochio couldn't help but smile. Taisetsu shrugged. "I don't understand. I'm in despair. What can I do? Go back to school?" Gaia's consciousness. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist suddenly said, "Speaking of which, they call themselves Gaia, but their actions are unified and they are very coordinated with each other. It's as if they can share the same perception. It's really like they share a consciousness." Yi said indifferently, "It's too simple to understand it like that. Gaia's consciousness isn't that cheap. The battle weapons you encountered might be controlled by an intelligent system. Of course, we still need to take a sample and study it to understand the specific situation." Wang, who had seen how powerful this blonde woman was. At this time, he secretly shook his head, thinking that this blonde woman really didn't give anyone a good face. She even disregarded the real big boss of the Tao Association. Seriously? Maybe this is what a newbie is, like a newborn calf that is not afraid of tigers. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist didn't care, and, comforted, there are new talents in every generation. If you can study it, it's indeed a blessing for me, Kelowna. If you can find a way to deal with this kind of battle weapons, you could be considered to have done a great deed. This old man is not bad. Taisetsu glanced at one and threw a cinnabar fruit to the Hundred Tribulation Taoist as a snack. This thing seemed to be good for the body. Wang, who ate a few with added ingredients, but it didn't seem to have an effect yet. This cinnabar fruit seems to be freshly picked. Could it be? The Hundred Tribulation Taoist frowned at this time. The Tao demons attracted Gaia because they touched the heaven and earth treasures in this place and suffered heavy casualties in the end. Yes, I just picked it. Is there a problem, Taoist? Wang, who asked confusedly. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist quickly asked, "How long have you been picking it?" "About an hour?" Taisetsu then said. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist frowned. "It shouldn't be, but not long after we collected the heaven and earth treasures here, we found Gaia. Why are you all fine?" "Taoist, can you tell us in detail what Gaia said when it appeared?" Luochio suddenly thought of something. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist recalled, "Gaia, the administrator of the Trial Treasure House, at your service, dear subscriber." It should have said something like that. Before this, we thought that this place might be related to that place. That place? Wang, who was stunned, and then seemed to realize something, and said in surprise, "That mysterious place that claimed to sell everything." The Hundred Tribulation Taoist nodded, and then told him what you 3 years ago said to warn people. Although Wang, who was young, he had heard of the legend of an 8-tailed celestial fox in the demon realm of Kelowna. The Hundred Tribulation Taoist sighed and said, This place is weird. You can see treasures everywhere, which may not be seen in the outside world for thousands of years. If that place really claimed to sell everything, I'm afraid it's just like this." Wang Hu's face suddenly became solemn. But Luocio couldn't help but feel strange after hearing the 100 Tribulation Taoist speculation. This seems to be a big misunderstanding. Should I clarify it? But according to the 100 Tribulation Taoist description of the situation when Gaia appeared, Luocio had a strong sense of déjà vu from Gaia's tone. "What's your plan now, Master 100 Tribulation Taoist?" Wang Hu frowned and asked. The 100 Tribulation Taoist said, "I met a junior called Jiangzhua. He was lucky enough to escape during the disaster. Unfortunately, I met a few more Gaias, so I could only send Jiangzhua away. I want to find this junior. I can't let him fall into a trap." Wang Hu hesitated. If it was a member of the White Tiger clan who was sent away, he would say that he would look for Jiangzhua together. But this was a member of the Tao Association. As if he could read Wang Hu's mind, the 100 Tribulations Taoist heaved a sigh of relief and slowly stood up. "I roughly remember the location under the Mingta Mountain. It's dangerous here. Wang Hu, why don't you bring these people to the Mingta Mountain? Maybe you can find a way to leave." Wang Hu frowned, seeming to be hesitating. "By the way, is that the Gaia you were talking about?" Unexpectedly, Tai Setsu pointed to the sky. Wang Hu and the 100 Tribulation Taoist looked up at the same time. Their faces changed dramatically. Above the sky, what they saw was a black mass. Many Gaias, like bats flying out from the cliff cave. The number was enough to make Wang Hu and the 100 Tribulation Taoist despair. Luocio pressed the button on the side of his black-rimmed glasses curiously. Chapter 1070. It continued to expand and expand, as if it had entered a state of rapid proliferation. The myriad essence pool was now laid out in front of Jiangzhua. The space above the pool was only enough for 50 Gaias to print at the same time, but now it expanded several times. Not only that, it was stacked layer by layer like a Rubik's Cube. In front of him, thousands of Gaias were printing at the same time. It was like a munitions factory that accidentally pressed the button to explode soldiers. When the printed Gaias were activated one by one, a gap suddenly appeared above the myriad essence pool. The activated Gaias flew out of this gap, one after another. "Attack!" The Gaia that was accidentally activated by Jiangzhua issued a cold command. More Gaias rushed out from the gap above. "Attack!" Who was attacking? Could it be that the Taoists and demons had already attacked this place? No, he heard from President Baijia that the Taoists and demons had suffered heavy casualties. Who could it be? Could the leader of 100 Calamity kill his way here by himself? This was not impossible, but in Jiang's opinion, it was almost impossible. But at this moment, the scene in front of him made Jiangzhua realize who the enemy Gaia was facing was. In front of the activated Gaia, a huge screen was projected. A set of scenes that Jiangzhua was very familiar with appeared on the screen. It was the scene of the battle between the Gaia sect and the valiant Taoist with the sword. But the recording angle was somewhat different from what Jiangzhua saw. It seemed to be from another Gaia's memory system. This set of scenes didn't record the end of the battle. Only half of the battle was recorded. It was when the Taoist with the sword killed everyone and a large number of Gaias were destroyed and fell from the sky. F***CK. Could it be that option, inheritance? Jiangzhua had a strange expression on his face. This Gaia that I activated inherited the memory of a Gaia that was destroyed in the war. Its memory is still in the war, and after connecting with this memory seamlessly, it thought that the war is still going on, so it exploded its troops. Penglai Treasure Vault entered Level 1 Alert Mode. All transactions paused. All unregistered life forms in the Treasure Vault are cleared. Myriad Pool entering Maximum Production Mode. Gaia gave out cold orders which made Jiang's scalp go numb. He suddenly regretted it. He felt that he might have caused those Taoists and demons who had luckily escaped to fall into an unprecedented crisis. Wait, you misunderstood. Hey, that person is long gone. Jiang's shouted at Gaia, who was giving out the order. Activating Subscriber Protection Program. But at this moment, Gaia waved her hand, and Jiang's body was swept by a halo that appeared from the ground. After that, he fell into a pillar of light that was as tall as a person, as if he was put into a container. After that, the ground split open, and the entire container was sucked into the ground. Jiang's only felt that his surroundings were dark, but his vision soon recovered. He seemed to be trapped in a special space, trapped in a strange light container. He couldn't cry for help, and couldn't cry for help. After an unknown amount of time, I knew you would come here. A voice came from behind Jiang's. Jiang's was shivered and turned around in fear. He looked behind him. There was a similar light container behind him, and in this container, there was another person. He was dressed in coarse sackcloth and had an imposing appearance, like a man who walked out of an ancient drama. Who are you? Jiang's asked in surprise. Me? The imposing man seemed to be deep in thought. After a while, he said, well, it should be this name. What's my surname again? Your surname is Gongsun. At this time, another clear female voice sounded from the side of Jiang's. He subconsciously looked over and found that it was another container of light. Inside it was a charming woman. Yes, Gongsun, I remember now. The man, Gongsun laughed and said, Little brother, my name is Gongsun. I remember now. I'm really sorry. I've been trapped in this place for too long. I can only kill time by practicing martial arts. As I practice, I forget things. As he practiced, he forgot things. Brother, how long have you been practicing? Jiang's was shuddered and looked at the woman beside him. The woman was lying lazily, but her eyes kept looking at him, which made Jiang's hair stand on end. I'm Jiang's. Jiang's took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Now I'm trapped here. I don't know if you two seniors can help me. Senior Gongsun said that I would definitely come in. What did he mean? Did you two seniors know I would come? You're pretty smart, kid. The woman chuckled and said, Of course we knew you would come. That's because we were able to see everything you did outside. Seniors, are you the owner of this place? Jiang's face changed. At this time, the woman coldly snorted and seemed to have a temperamental personality. She coldly said, If the two of us were the masters of this place, would we be trapped in this damned place without seeing the light of day? Then, same as you. Gongsun sighed and said, Put your hand on the light screen in front of you. Then you'll know why we knew you would come. Jiang's hesitated and finally put his hand on the light screen. When he put his hand down, Jiang's was startled. The familiar blue screen suddenly appeared in front of him. This is... Jiang's stared at the content on the screen and was surprised. As you can see, although we can't go out, we can see what's happening outside through this light screen. Although we can't see anything except for a few core places, it's enough for us to know what's happening outside. Gongsun shook his head and said, Not only you, but also the Taoist who came with you in a monster race. We can see everything clearly. Seniors, may I ask? Jiang's frowned while looking at the blue light screen. The woman said, You've seen the scene of the battle between Tai Bai and Gaia, right? Tai Bai. Was he the Taoist who held the sword? Jiang's nodded subconsciously. The woman sighed and said slowly, That year, Tai Bai and I broke into this place together. But fate made fools of us. We met by chance and became the so-called subscribers. But later, for some unknown reason, Tai Bai suddenly attacked and wantonly destroyed this place, causing Gaia to chase after him. The woman suddenly let out a bitter laugh. Tai Bai's sword is too sharp. He killed who knows how many Gaias. In the end, this war went out of control. Gongsun and I were sent to this place, nominally for protection. What's funny is that the two of us came together with Tai Bai. After that battle, Tai Bai disappeared and there was only one Gaia left. It seemed to be seriously injured and fell into hibernation. Gongsun and I have been trapped in this place because of this. She sighed and shook her head. Speaking of which, we can't count how much time has passed. Little brother, how is the outside world these years? Jiang's looked around. There was nothing in this place. It was like a space of nothingness. There was no alternation of day and night. The passing of time was very vague. They were trapped in a narrow container of light. The only thing they could do to pass time was to peep at the situation outside through the screen. If it were him, he would be driven crazy in a few months, not to mention a few years. Wait, a few years? These two people entered together with the Taoist Tai Bai in a memory recording. That Taoist Tai Bai was very powerful. How come he had never heard of him? Looking at their clothes again, Jiang Zui asked cautiously, "Seniors, how long have you been trapped here?" Gong Sun said, 2 or 3 years. I can only make a rough estimate. By the way, little brother, your clothes are quite strange. Where did you come from? You don't look like someone from Persia in the Western region. 2 or 3 years, Persia in the Western region. Basically, people didn't use these terms anymore. Jiang seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly said, "Seniors, do you remember what dynasty it was before you came here? It should be the 3rd year and 6th month of the enlightened martial sect." The woman looked at Jiang Zui and asked in surprise, "Is there a problem?" The 3rd year of the enlightened martial sect. The 3rd year of the enlightened martial sect. The 3rd year of the enlightened martial sect? Jiang Zui kept repeating. Suddenly, he sat down and looked at Gong Sun and the charming woman with a pale face. "Seniors, the 3rd year of the enlightened martial sect was 500 years ago. What?" The charming woman and Gong Sun-woo's face changed dramatically at the same time. The number of 8 million kept refreshing on Luochio's glasses. Finally, there was a number 678. 678 seemed to be the current number of these Gaias. Of course, this number is still increasing. Gaias flew out from a gap in the sky endlessly, making it impossible to know how many of them it could reach in the end. After these Gaias rushed out of the gap in the sky, they instantly split into several batches and flew in different directions. One of them flew toward Luochio's direction. "Master?" Yi whispered in Luochio's ear. Luochio blinked and looked at the gap that the Gaias flew out from. When the number of Gaias reached 1,000, the gap suddenly closed. Luochio pondered for a while and said, "Didn't you say that we can only know after researching? Just in time, we have the research material." Yi nodded. Her master's meaning was very clear. Miss Maid raised her head to take a look. These rapidly approaching Gaias were like empty shells. Although they could move, in the eyes of Master, they were probably just lifeless objects. "Do you want to fight?" Daz rotated his arms at this moment. At the same time, he twisted his neck, making a cracking sound. "I only need 2 samples," Yi said indifferently. "I'm responsible for catching them. You just clean up the hindrances. These are just lifeless objects. Don't hesitate." Daz shrugged. Although the Gaia of these girls' faces were very delicate and cute, it was another kind of impression when matched with the cannon-like arms. "Don't worry." Taisetsu smiled. "I'm not a good person." But Taisetsu's words were soon interrupted by someone. The voice of 100 Calamity Taoist. "Don't be reckless." 100 Calamity Taoist stood up abruptly. "You don't know how terrible these things are. You can't deal with such a large number, even if it's only one. Facing them, we can only avoid them for the time being." The 100 Tribulations Taoist had killed several of them earlier and had almost exhausted all of his vitality. Now that he had eaten some cinnabar fruits, he didn't have enough time to recover. He couldn't help but feel anxious. He was afraid that these 3 were still young and impulsive. But Wang Hu couldn't help but smile bitterly. "President 100 Calamity, it's too late, we're surrounded." 100 Calamity Taoist was shocked. Not only were there a group of Gaias in front of them, but there was also a group of Gaias behind the hillside where they were forming a pincer attack. Wang Hu had to clench his teeth. The Tiger King tattoo on his body was emerging rapidly, and some animal characteristics began to appear on his body. On the crystal of the black-rimmed glasses, Wang Hu's value began to rise rapidly. 4 million, 5 million, 7 million, 7 million and 600,000, 7 million and 700,000, 7 million and 900,000, 7 million and 900,000. After that, Wang Hu's value didn't increase again, but it had increased by nearly 3 times compared to the beginning. Luochio adjusted his glasses. This was the so-called increase in combat power after transforming. "President, Boss Luo, good luck." Wang Hu clenched his teeth, bent his legs slightly, and jumped. Let me see if I can buy you some time, at most 10 breaths. Even so, facing so many Gaias, if each one was as terrifying as the one he dealt with before, let alone 10 breaths, Wang Hu was not confident in 5 breaths. But at this moment, a figure flashed directly to Wang Hu's side and stopped him with one hand. What are you doing? Wang Hu was furious. Don't make trouble. Taisetsu shook his head and pressed Wang Hu down. Then he broke the necklace on his neck with one hand. The key of the necklace suddenly burst out a bright light in Taisetsu's hand, and then an ancient sword formed in his palm. Just stand there obediently if you are sick. After saying that, Taisetsu grabbed the materialized Zhanlu's sword and bent his knees slightly. Then, like a rocket, he rushed into the sky and slashed towards the Gaias. In midair, Taisetsu swung the Zhanlu sword horizontally, and a huge crescent appeared. The crescent extended to 100 meters long and rushed towards the hundreds of Gaias. At this moment, the Gaias in the sky all used their arms to form a light shield in front of them, blocking the crescent. With a loud sound, the light shields of the 3 Gaias in the front instantly cracked, and they were instantly cut in half by the crescent. The momentum of the crescent moon did not weaken and continued to soar into the sky. In the sky, more than a dozen Gaias were cut in half at the waist. The moment they were cut in half, their bodies were directly blown up. With this swing of the sword, more than 10 flames exploded in the sky. At this moment, Taisetsu swung the Zhanlu sword and rushed towards the rest of the Atom Gaias. Taisetsu attacked the Gaias in front of him. As for Miss Maid, she did not stay idle. She leaped onto the hillside and looked at the Gaias rushing out from behind the hillside. She brushed her hair that was messed up by the wind behind her ear. Then she swung her hand in front of her, and more than 10 black flames shot out. Yuye's fingers flicked the black flames one by one, as if she was pressing the black keys of piano. The small black fireballs seemed to have been precisely calculated and hit the Gaias one by one. Burn! Only ashes were left after they were burned. Huang Baifu, you just said that they have just become transcendence in Kelowna? 100 Tribulations Taoist opened his mouth and looked at Wang Hu with a dumbfounded expression. Wang Hu's expression was not much better than 100 Tribulations Taoists. He subconsciously said, maybe these Gaias are weaker. But at this moment, an ear-piercing sound was suddenly heard. In the sky, 10 Gaias stretched out their arms at the same time. The cannons on their arms instantly fired at the same time. Instantly, 20 beams of light shot towards Wang Hu and 100 Tribulations Taoist. Wang Hu and 100 Tribulations Taoist couldn't help but gasp. Wang Hu was confident that he could dodge it, but 100 Tribulations Taoist was so weak that he was afraid. At this moment, Luoqiu, who was standing next to them, reached out and grabbed the beams of light. Then he swung his arm, and the 20 beams of light were forcefully changed direction a few meters away and were shot to the side. The 20 beams of light hit the stone forest in front of them, and a terrifying explosion rose up. The stone forest was blown into a huge crater that was more than 100 meters wide. The terrifying shockwave immediately blew back, making Luoqiu's clothes flutter. As for the 10 Gaias who launched the sneak attack, 10 black fire pillars suddenly appeared above their heads. Under the impact of the black fire pillars, the 10 Gaias were directly annihilated. Are you two okay? Luoqiu turned around. Elder, Mr. Wang Hu. Who the hell is weak? Chapter 1071. When there were only 2 Gaias left on the hillside, Miss Maid waved her hands and clenched her fists. Short swords formed by black flames shot out from between her fingers. She held 3 swords in each hand. The black and white dress fluttered in the air, but it wasn't sexy at all because the long dress had already covered the beauty of the group. You can never see the part of those wonderful legs. The 2 Gaias chose to engage in close combat. The cannons in their hands turned into sharp blades in an instant. They rushed toward Yi from the left and right. At this moment, Yi lowered her body and then jumped up. Her body spun quickly in midair, and the black short swords between her fingers shot out from her hands. 6 black lights flashed by like a meteor. With extreme speed, they pierced through the bodies of the 2 Gaias and nailed them to the ground. Although the 2 Gaias had lost their ability to move, they could still move their arms. Their pupils suddenly lit up, and their hands turned into cannons again. Miss Maid frowned and rushed forward again. The black flame long swords appeared out of thin air. There was no swordsmanship involved. It was purely because of the extreme speed. When Yi flashed past the 2 Gaias like a ghost, their legs and arms were directly chopped off, leaving only their torso. Battle failed. Self-destruction sequence activated. When the emotionless voice of one of the Gaias sounded, its mouth opened slightly, and a huge amount of energy formed in its body. Yuya's eyes focused slightly. When she was about to do something, the 2 Gaias, who were about to self-destruct, suddenly rushed into the air. With a dazzling light, terrifying energy was released from their bodies. A ripple visible to the naked eye spread out from the place of the explosion. However, the ripple didn't spread far before it began to shrink in an instant. As if it was being compressed by something, it was also as if time was flowing backward. The destructive energy was finally compressed until only a faint light was left. Finally, it scattered with the wind. Yui picked up the arm that was cut off from the Gaia on the ground and returned to Luacio's side. "Sorry for making you worry, Master. There's no way to self-destruct." Luacio shook his head lightly. Then, he reached out and tucked a strand of Miss Maid's messy hair behind her ear. He said softly, "As long as you're fine." Yui said softly, "The power of this explosion isn't enough to hurt me. Don't worry, Master. But there will be times when I want to attack." Luacio smiled. He couldn't always hide behind her, even though he hadn't encountered a situation where she would be injured. On the side, the boss and the maid whispered softly. After Daz glanced at them, he sighed. He raised the Jean-Lu sword in his hand and muttered, "Buddy, are you full?" The Jean-Lu sword hummed softly. Taisetsu shook his head and looked up. He was not as fast as Miss Maid to deal with the female combat weapons. There were still more than 10 of them left. However, it wasn't slow. Only less than a minute had passed since the start of the battle. Despite the large number of Gaia, compared to the void original demon in the dimensional crevice that Daz experienced, it was really a small fry in the presence of a great one. At this moment, more than a dozen Gaias surrounded the city at this time, trapping Daz in the middle, but they suddenly stopped. The pupils of the Gaias suddenly flashed. Something shot out from their pupils. It seemed that they wanted to pass through Taisetsu's body. Taisetsu frowned. In fact, dozens of seconds ago, some of the Gaias had done the same thing to him. However, Taisetsu felt that it might be some kind of attack, so he kept dodging. Now that more than 10 Gaias surrounded him, it was difficult to dodge. "Taisetsu, they will self-destruct. Don't force yourself if you can't stop them," Yi said softly. "Oh, okay." Taisetsu shrugged. Then, he chuckled and raised the Jean-Lu sword in his hand. "Buddy, since that's the case, let's go for the big one." Taisetsu had been dodging the strange lights that shot out from the Gaia's eyes. He was a little frustrated. Now that he had received the order, how could he hesitate? In an instant, the clouds in the sky rolled, and the wind and clouds changed color. An enormous sword of light slowly descended from the cloud vortex at this moment. It was difficult to estimate the physique of this rolling light sword. What it said was only the tip of the blade. At this time, Daz suddenly waved the Jean-Lu sword in his hand, and the huge light sword in the sky fell in an instant. "Heavenly sword," a low voice sounded from Daz's mouth. The huge lightsaber also plunged into the ground at this moment. It was as if there was an invisible giant above the clouds, holding the sword hilt with both hands and thrusting it into the ground. In the instant that the gigantic sword of light descended, the remaining Gaias all raised their hands, as if instinctively blocking it. However, they couldn't block it. They couldn't block it at all. The light shield was instantly annihilated. When the huge sword of light finally pierced the ground, more than a dozen bursts of sparks dotted the blade of the huge sword of light. Boom! When the blade landed on the ground, a sword hum resounded through the sky. Following that, a wave of air spread out from the flat bottom and swept out in all directions. The wave of air spread out for over 1,000 meters before it gradually calmed down. The huge light sword gradually shattered, and the scattered light scattered with the wind. Taisetsu slowly landed on the ground and panted slightly. He looked at the scene in front of him. The entire stone forest had disappeared, and only a huge crack was left. Taisetsu shrugged and walked to Luochio. He smiled and said, "Boss, I didn't stop for a moment. Heavenly Sword?" Luochio suddenly asked, I just said a random name." Taisetsu shrugged and said, "I feel that moves with names are more powerful, as long as you're happy." Luochio smiled. He didn't care about this kind of thing. Heavenly Sword. When the huge light sword dissipated, the battle was over, and only a huge crack was left. Wang Hu and the 100 Tribulations Taoist slowly sighed in relief. Wang Hu immediately dispersed his Tiger King tattoo. Even though this was only the first stage of the divine beast transformation, Wang Hu knew that he wouldn't be able to withstand the giant sword of light that was descending from the sky, even if he went all out at the third stage. That was probably beyond the power of the strongest Tao, querying realm cultivator in Kelowna's transcendental realm. The gap between the levels was like the gap between heaven and earth. There's always someone better than you. The 100 Tribulations Taoist sighed and said, "Huang Baifu, it seems that our vision is still too narrow." Wang Hu smiled bitterly. He couldn't deny the 100 Tribulations Taoist's words. Whether it was the woman in white who could fight to a draw with him, Gaia under the control of the old ghost, or Boss Luo and the other two, Wang Hu had always boasted that he had few opponents in the world. Looking at the whole Kelowna, except for a few old guys who felt that they were on par, only Shinryu in Kelowna couldn't be defeated. Shinryu couldn't be defeated. Shinryu represented the fate of the whole Kelowna. Being an enemy of him was equivalent to being an enemy of the whole Kelowna. No one could beat him. In front of him, the boss Luo and the other two, whether it was Taisetsu's heavenly sword, the exotic woman, Yuye's strange black fire and extreme speed, or boss Luo's methods, Wang Hu was drenched in cold sweat. Only when one was in the situation could one feel the difference in power. No matter how one described it afterward, it was difficult to describe the mystery. Wang Hu could feel how terrifying the power of the self-destruction of the two Gaias was, such terrifying power of self-destruction, yet it was so easily dissipated. The difficulty of blocking and dissipating a power was like the fault between civilizations. It was a level that Wang Hu couldn't touch at all. "Thank you, Elder Luo, Taoist Luo, for your help." The 100 Tribulations Taoist was indeed an evergreen tree in the Tao world who had lived for thousands of years. He had seen all kinds of storms. Although he was now the leader of Kelowna's Tao world, he started as a small Taoist and didn't have a high aptitude. However, he had indeed seen the brilliant era of cultivators and seen too many geniuses of that era. Thus, he was very calm at this time. "I'm not a Taoist. I don't cultivate Tao." Luochio shook his head at this time. "I don't know what Tao is either, so I don't deserve to be called a Taoist." The 100 Tribulations Taoist was startled. This mysterious young man was honest. He thought quickly and seemed to see the hope of leaving this dangerous place from Luochio. He said directly, "Then I'll call you Boss Luo, just like Wang Hu." Luochio could only nod. "Boss Luo." The 100 Tribulations Taoist sighed and said, "I have a request. I wonder if Boss Luo can help. Of course, I won't let Boss Luo help me for free." At this time, Luochio sighed and suddenly said, "Elder, it's better if you don't say this, but since you've said it then, I can't do anything." The 100 Tribulations Taoist was stunned. At this time, Luochio smiled and stood in front of the 100 Tribulations Taoist. He bowed slightly and said, "Honorable guest, is there anything I can help you with? No matter what you want, this shop will serve you." "Boss Luo." "Boss." "Shop." Instantly, the 100 Tribulations Taoist's eyes opened wide. He finally realized something and blurted out, "Is it that place?" "Yes." "I didn't expect." The 100 Tribulations Taoist was absent-minded for a while and finally sighed. "It's only in this mountain, deep in the clouds. I'm going crazy." At the bottom of the crevice created by the heaven sword, a head rolled down due to the loosening of the soil. Beep, beep, beep. There was such a sound coming from the rolling head. This was without a doubt the head of one of the Gaias. Scan successful. Alien source possession rate, 79. 64%. Level 1 authorization pass. Bang. But the moment the head fell to the bottom, it exploded automatically. She seemed to have heard something. In the cave, Qin Shiyu, who was sitting cross-legged to heal her wounds, suddenly opened her eyes. At the same time, Su Zijuan, who was leaning against a rock and dozing off, also woke up. Jessica didn't know what happened, but when she saw her master and Qin Shiyu's serious expression, she couldn't help but feel nervous. At this time, Qin Shiyu's green lotus sword, which had never left her hand, suddenly made a loud sword sound and started to tremble slightly. This kind of trembling seemed to be hard to calm down. Even if Qin Shiyu stretched out her hand and wiped the sword blade, she still couldn't calm down the trembling of the green lotus sword. This place is really a place with good feng shui. Su Zijuan stood up slowly, a green lotus sword unyielding, and now a Howren sword, very strong sword intent. Qin Shiyu frowned. I can't even calm down the instinct of the green lotus sword. Su Zijuan said indifferently. A magical sword has a spirit, let alone a magical sword that has cultivated a sword spirit. Every sword is unique, no matter if it's a killing sword, an arrogant sword, or a self-proclaimed king sword. It can't escape from the competition. Isn't this a normal thing? The crux of the matter is, who was the one who unleashed this sword intent that was filled with righteous qi? Qin Shiyu directly lifted the green lotus sword and stood up, walking towards the outside of the cave. In just a few steps, she had already walked out of the cave. Qin Shiyu gazed at the primeval forest in front of her, and then climbed over the overlapping mountain peaks. She saw the clouds were surging, and a giant light sword was falling from the sky at this moment. It seemed that as long as one was in this place, all kinds of strange things would happen. Even though she already knew this, Su Zijuan couldn't help but slightly open her mouth when she saw this giant light sword falling down. That place isn't where we were before. Jessica woke up with a start. Su Zijuan pondered quickly, then looked at Qin Shiyu and asked, "How's your recovery?" "About 70% of my power has been restored," Qin Shiyu said with a solemn face. 70% power, whether it was really 70% or not, Su Zijuan didn't fully believe it. She nodded directly and said quickly, "Then, I need exercise." Qin Shiyu didn't say anything, but just drew the green lotus sword down slowly and closed her eyes at the same time. Jessica didn't understand what the two were communicating with each other, but she instinctively felt something wrong. At this moment, Su Zijuan directly waved her arm, and the blood-red demon power turned into a giant claw, climbing all the way along the stone wall outside the cave, and finally clawing at something fiercely. At the same time, with a clang, Qin Shiyu directly waved the green lotus sword in her hand, and a cyan sword light shot out instantly. At the top of the mountain peak, two Gaias slowly flew out from the left and right side of the mountain peak. Target discovered, exterminate. At that moment, a beam of light suddenly shot out. Su Zijuan's eyes narrowed, and the huge claw condensed from demon power retracted in a flash. It shrank around the three of them and directly blocked the beam of light. But when the smoke and dust dissipated, there were already dozens of Gaias in front of them. Su Zijuan frowned and looked at her palm. There was a red wound on her palm, like a scratch, but it healed itself quickly. Su Zijuan muttered, "I feel that these are different from the previous one, and they seem to be much weaker, but the number, were they bullying them with numbers?" Chapter 1072. Rumble. Dozens of light beams shot from the top of the cave and converged at the entrance of the cave, where Su Zijuan and the other two were. The huge energy seemed to be able to tear everything apart. In the blink of an eye, the entire mountain where the cave was located had been destroyed. Smoke and dust poured down like a vicious sandstorm, covering the forest below. But the Gaias in the sky didn't stop. Instead, they divided into two groups and dived down. There was a stream of air flowing rapidly in the smoke and dust. Qin Shiyu, Su Zi, and Jessica broke through the smoke and dust and rushed into the forest. They intended to use the complexity of the primitive forest as the most natural barrier. This was the normal way to fight with fewer people against more people. But they didn't expect that the Gaias didn't care about the destruction. The Gaias recorded it down and launched a blanket attack on the forest without hesitation. Light beams shot out from their muzzles one after another. Su Zijuan and Qin Shiyu rushed out of the forest awkwardly. Jessica didn't have the ability to fly, so she could only hide in the forest for the time being. In Qin Shiyu's hand, the green lotus sword song was bursting out majestic green lotus sword chi. She waved it from a distance, and the sword chi was shot out directly, but she was facing 39 Gaias. Discovered, a Gaia scanned Qin Shiyu's body and finally fixed its eyes on green lotus sword song. At the same time, in the depth of Penglai Treasure House, the first Gaia that was activated also received the message sent back by this Gaia. In the space of Myriad Essence Pool, the projection of Green Lotus Sword Song appeared in front of the first battle-type Gaia, and on the other side, the memory of the battle with Tai Bai, Sword Immortal, was also extracted. The Green Lotus Sword Song in the two projections started to overlap. The first Gaia issued a battle command directly. Target eliminated, first confirmed. After that, Gaia looked at the information from the other side. It was an image, and the person in the image was Daz. Level 1, authorized user confirmed, but that was all. After that, Gaia no longer paid attention to them. They were used for combat. Other than combat, there was only combat. Although there was a setting in the program to obey authority, guarding the Penglai Treasure Vault was an order from a higher authority, the owner of the vault. However, the command not to attack Taisetsu also came from Gaia's mouth. Enemy danger index above normal. At this time, Gaia was analyzing the data of this batch of Gaias that had already been wiped out. Very soon, it had a new judgment. Proposed production of special combat use Gaia. Requesting host. Requesting host. No reply from host. Entering independent thinking. Production of special combat use Gaia. As a result, the colorful and dazzling essences in the huge Myriad Essence Pool suddenly seemed to boil up and churn in the pool. At the same time, Gaia had finished printing a new batch of mass-produced combat models. Another opening appeared above the Myriad Essence Pool, and these mass-produced models instantly rushed out. When Su Zijuan wandered around these mass-produced models and attacked them one by one, she indeed felt that these Gaias were different from the ones she encountered at the beginning. First of all, they were much weaker in terms of ability. They were not invincible. At least, she could break the defense of these Gaias. She took a look at Qin Shiyu. This woman relied on the Green Lotus Sword Song. Although it looked dangerous, she could still hold on for a long time. But at this moment, a crack suddenly appeared in the sky above. From the crack, figures rushed out one after another. In the blink of an eye, there were hundreds of them. Seeing this, Su Zijuan's mood instantly turned bad. Stop fighting, stop fighting, stop fighting. Her monster power would eventually run out, but these Gaias kept increasing in number. How could Ba, who was hundreds of years older than her and still had the appearance of a young girl, not know the truth? Moreover, these Gaias were not ants. Even if they were alone, they could fight to a draw with her under normal circumstances. Fortunately, these Gaias' attack method was relatively simple. Qin Shiyu, wait in front. If you can survive, continue to form a team. Su Zijuan shouted to the side. Instantly, her monster power drew out a huge blood-red fog. Then she rushed into the forest and lifted Jessica up. She didn't have a deep relationship with Qin Shiyu. They were just a temporary team. Besides, she cared about the Green Lotus Sword Song, but that was all. When it was time to be ruthless, she would be ruthless. Qin Shiyu didn't feel unhappy after hearing that. She just took a look at the direction where Su Zijuan left, then she calmed down and concentrated on dealing with her enemy. However, the Gaia that had appeared from the crack in the sky had also begun to join the battle. Every time the Green Lotus Sword Song was activated, it would consume a large amount of Fa Li. Even though this master's sword had the sharpness to easily cut through the Gaia, it could not withstand the huge consumption. The Green Lotus Sword Song was now making a soft sound. Qin Shiyu sighed. This sword was still unyielding and had the intention to continue the fight. It's a pity that I'm not master after all, so I can't release all your power. Qin Shiyu heaved a sigh. She knew that retreating could only help her hide for a lifetime. These Gaias were endless. If she couldn't find a way to leave here, she would have to fight them eventually. But Qin Shiyu stopped, facing the encircling Gaias alone. The new batch of Gaias didn't chase after Su Zijuan. Instead, they blocked all of Qin Shiyu's escape routes, which made her feel extremely desperate. I don't disgrace the name of Huan Jindao. Qin Shiyu held the Green Lotus Sword Song with a resolute look. I'm the disciple of Tai Bai, Sword Immortal. As if it felt Qin Shiyu's rising fighting intent, the soft sound of the Green Lotus Sword Song suddenly turned into a resounding sword sound. Streaks of green sword light shot out from the Green Lotus Sword Song. At this moment, a green lotus seemed to rise around Qin Shiyu. Every petal of the lotus contained the supreme sword intent of the Green Lotus Sword Song, as if it was singing. Zhao Ke's beard tassels, Wu Go's snow-white hooks. A silver saddle shines on a white horse, moving as valiantly as a shooting star, killing one person in 10 steps, leaving no trace for thousands of miles, leaving when the matter is done, hiding his identity in name. Qin Shiyu allowed the Green Lotus Sword Song to move her arm and allowed it to crazily demand her Fa Li. At this moment, Qin Shiyu closed her eyes. She seemed to have gone back to the distant past. On the peak of the mountain of the Huan Jindao Temple, she saw the man in white drinking wine, practicing sword, writing poems, watching the clouds move by, and smiling at her. As if she had caught something, Qin Shiyu suddenly opened her eyes between life and death. That huge green lotus bloomed at this moment, and countless green lights rushed up to the sky, killing one person in 10 steps, leaving no trace for thousands of miles. The sword auras did not rush out for thousands of miles. They eventually dissipated in the sky, turning into specks of starlight. The 17 Gaias had been completely shredded into pieces by the massive amount of sword auras under the full bloom of the Green Lotus. But it was only a small part of this batch of Gaias. They quickly filled the gap and raised their arms that had turned into cannons. Waves of powerful energy quickly gathered on the mass-produced Gaia. Qin Shiyu raised her head, glancing around, and then glancing at the Green Lotus Sword Song in her hand. Green Lotus Sword Classic. I finally touched Master's figure. San Yang didn't disappoint you, did she? The moment she touched the level of that man's swordsmanship was also the moment of her death. Qin Shiyu felt relieved in her heart. Hundreds of light beams shot out, gathering on Qin Shiyu's body with the power to penetrate everything. Time seemed to slow down. Qin Shiyu slowly closed her eyes. Little fox, how did you get hurt? San Yang didn't find you after all. Everything suddenly became quiet. Qin Shiyu only heard the sound of the wind and the sound of footsteps. She opened her eyes and saw that those beams of light didn't penetrate her body in the end. These powerful beams of light seemed to have been frozen and stopped less than a meter away from her body. But they were still connected to the cannons on Gaia's arms, forming such a weird scene. Are you okay? Qin Shiyu suddenly turned around. Outside the light beams that surrounded her, she saw a young man, leading the beautiful maid, walking over slowly. The floating Gaias in the sky still stopped. Qin Shiyu revealed a surprised look. She didn't know why this man appeared in this place. But, obviously, she was saved because of this man's appearance. Luo Qiu walked over slowly. Those light beams that had paused in front of him dispersed little by little. No matter how powerful the energy contained in them was, they were blown away by the wind like light dust after dispersing. This kind of dissipation spread along the light beams, and finally spread to the Gaia's bodies. Gaia's bodies also started to disperse at this moment. In the end, only one Gaia remained. This Gaia seemed to be wrapped by some kind of power, slowly landing on the ground. Its body was stiff and motionless, as if it had become a statue. "How did you get hurt?" Luocio blinked and asked. Chinchiyu thought about the current situation at the fastest speed. She was saved by Luocio, or to be exact, by the club. She was very clear about the nature of this club. It would help if it was needed. But because of this nature, it naturally had to pay a price if it needed help. She had paid a certain price in the past. Chinchiyu later bought a temporary stay in the club. But obviously, this wasn't the reason why Luocio should help. Chinchiyu looked at the wound on her arm. It was cut by the sharp blade on Gaia's hand. It was so deep that the bone could be seen. Not only that, there was also a similar wound on her leg and back. Red blood stained her white clothes. Compared to this, why are you here? Chinchiyu frowned, but relaxed instead. Perhaps it was because of the fact that the other party only acted for the sake of benefits that they felt at ease. Someone asked us to. At that moment, Luocio said softly, "An old man hopes that we can take away the members of the Tao world and the demon world safely. Miss Chin is also a member of the Tao world in Kelowna, so of course you're within our service scope." "Who?" Chinchiyu was silent for a moment before slowly spitting out a word. Luocio didn't answer, but just smiled faintly. "You won't easily reveal the information of your patron." Chinchiyu nodded. "That is to say, I'm safe for the time being, right?" "That's right." Luocio nodded. Chinchiyu heaved a sigh of relief, but her body had reached its limit. She closed her eyes, falling down towards Luocio instantly. At this distance, she would definitely bump into her master. Miss Servant Girl of the club directly stepped forward, stretching out her hand to stop Chinchiyu's abdomen. Luocio didn't feel anything, but complained in his heart. "It seems that women often fall down at the sight of me." "Master?" Yi asked softly at this moment. Luocio thought for a while, saying, "Miss Chin is our regular customer. We still have some unfinished service. Treat our customer well." Yi nodded, directly dragging Chinchiyu to a nearby tree. Luocio was clear about what Yi wanted to do, to gather information about Chinchiyu. But she dragged her over there just now, right? Luocio shook his head, pretending that he didn't see it. He glanced around, hearing some sounds of fierce fighting coming from the road ahead. It should be Taisetsu. He was sent to support Su Zijuan on the way here. Taisetsu was relatively stable, so Luocio had nothing to worry about. As for Wang Hu and Hundred Tribulations Taoist, they were still behind. Because they had heard the sounds of the battle, the club's trio had gone ahead first. Of course, he could bring them along, but Luocio had always been an energy conservationist. At this moment, Luocio, who had nothing to do, looked at the ground. There was a quaint long sword lying on the ground. It fell to the ground because Chinchiyu lost her grip after she fell down. Luocio bent down, picking up this ancient sword casually. This ancient sword gave out a soft sound, which was pleasant to the ears. On both sides of the sword, there were some vague ancient characters, which were looming under the light. "Green Lotus, Sword Song?" Luocio read, then smiled. "Is this your name? It sounds nice." On the sword blade, a cyan flowing light flashed, then calmed down, lying quietly in Luocio's hand. Luocio smiled, feeling that this sword seemed to have intelligence, and was quite obedient. He then walked to Yu Ye's side with a Green Lotus Sword Song and placed it beside Chinchiyu. Miss Maid was omnipotent. Now the wounds on Chinchiyu's body had healed, and she had changed into a new set of clothes. Chapter 1073. There were 3 in front, 5 on the left, 2 on the right, and 6 at the back. Su Zijuan stopped in an instant. She had no choice but to stop because the Gaias had formed a besieging formation. "Master," Jessica became nervous. She saw that Su Zijuan was frowning. At this moment, Jessica found that Su Zijuan's body was different from before. The temperature around her master suddenly rose rapidly. The air around Su Zijuan was like a layer of distorted air on the asphalt road under the noon sun. Just being close to her made Jessica feel thirsty. It was like being close to a charcoal stove in a sauna. The air that entered her respiratory tract brought a burning sensation. Jessica stepped back hurriedly. She was shocked to find that the soil around Su Zijuan had turned into scorched earth. The moisture in the air seemed to have been completely expelled at this moment. But this kind of high temperature seemed to disappear in a flash. Su Zijuan frowned, and that kind of hot breath soon calmed down. You've dealt with them? Su Zijuan frowned with a weird expression. Jessica opened her mouth, but saw that Su Zijuan was looking at the dark part of the forest with a solemn expression. A figure was walking out from the darkness. As he slowly approached, he finally revealed himself to be a frivolous young man. This young man was holding a persimmon-like fruit in his hand. He walked out while biting it. Oh, it's okay. I've killed those guys, the young man said. Su Zijuan was confused. Who are you? The young man smiled slightly and said, My name is Daz. The boss asked me to come and help you. When Su Zijuan and Jessica followed Taisetsu to the place where Luochio was in the forest, a sense of relief flashed through the eyes of this hundreds-of-years-old girl. Then she continued to show a weird expression. She had bought a cup of Cain's blood from this boss. The effect of the blood was very good. It directly recovered her body. Su Zijuan was different from Long Shuo in that she didn't resist making a deal with the club, but she didn't expect to meet the boss again so soon and under such circumstances. Jessica's expression became a little weird or astonished. Su Zijuan noticed Jessica's expression easily. She turned her head and asked in a low voice, Do you know them? At this moment, Jessica said calmly, No, I'm just curious about the origin of these people. Su Zijuan said, A merchant who claims to sell everything. But when it comes to their real origin, even I don't know. Only a few people in Kelowna know about it. Later, try not to speak if you can. Just follow behind me. Jessica nodded with a solemn look. Boss, mission accomplished. Taisetsu walked to Luochio casually and greeted him. Different from Yi who did everything perfectly, and Taienzi, who didn't mean what he said, Taisetsu always had a casual attitude, casual but reliable. Thank you for your hard work. Luochio nodded and then said, Taoist Baijia and Mr. Wong who should be here soon. You can go and help them. No problem. Taisetsu nodded and jumped onto a big tree without saying anything. Then he entered this primitive god again. Qin Shiyu hadn't woken up yet, but this place was full of aura. A large amount of aura was pouring into Qin Shiyu's body. Su Zijuan glanced at Qin Shiyu's clothes. After being stunned for a while, her expression became even weirder. Actually, it was embarrassment. She suddenly didn't know what to say to the boss. Something like, Thank you. Miss Su Zijuan, it's my honor to see you again. Luochio greeted her first. After a moment of silence, Su Zijuan finally opened her mouth slowly, but the first sentence was, Do I need to pay? But I didn't ask for it. This time, it was Luochio's turn to be stunned. Luochio felt as if he was being forced to buy and sell by force. Miss Su Zijuan, you misunderstood me. Luochio shook his head. Though it's not free this time, it's paid by someone else. A good person. Su Zijuan blinked her eyes and asked curiously, Which idiot is so generous? Let me think. Not only me, but also Qin Shiyu. I didn't know this woman before, and we didn't have any contact. Can I assume that you're rescuing everyone in this place? Miss Su Zijuan, you only need to know that you're included in the rescuing. Luochio smiled faintly. I'll send you out later. Or Miss Su Zijuan, it's also not a problem if you want to go out now. After saying this, Luochio waved his hand. Suddenly, a distorted gap as tall as a person appeared beside him. This is the way out. So simple. Looking at this distorted space, Su Zijuan was speechless. She always had this feeling. When a group of players was still thinking about how to pass a checkpoint, this guy in front of her had already defeated the last big Demon King and found the last Easter egg. Then he sat in the Demon King's castle, turning his head and looking at the newbies who were still struggling in the first checkpoint with a despicable look. The exit was just within reach. It was indeed a great temptation. Jessica couldn't help looking at Su Zijuan. She needed to wait for her master's order. Su Zijuan suddenly asked, Is it compulsory? Luochio shook his head. It's not compulsory. Su Zijuan thought for a while and nodded. It seems that this nice guy can't afford a high price. Luochio didn't say anything. He just smiled to deal with this hundreds of years old girl who was difficult to deal with. Since it's not compulsory, It means that I have a choice, Su Zijuan said indifferently. Obviously, we're not the only ones he wants to help. That is to say, before the last one leaves, I still have the right to leave, right? You can understand it that way. Luochio nodded. But Miss Su Zijuan, you have to think carefully. I won't stay here indefinitely. Time limit? Luochio didn't answer. Su Zijuan clicked her tongue. It seemed that it was difficult to get more information from this guy and get more details about the deal with the nice guy, unless she was willing to buy the information herself. She didn't know when Luochio would leave, which meant that if she didn't leave this time, she would probably miss the chance to leave. She didn't know how many people Luochio would save, which meant that when the last one left, Luochio would probably leave directly. And before that, if she wasn't with the last one, she would also miss the chance to leave. Obviously, this boss wouldn't turn back for the second time and open a way for her to leave. So Su Zijuan quickly thought of several options. First, leave now. Second, follow this boss and choose when to leave within the time limit. Third, act separately, but at least find one person who would be saved, lock this person's position, and leave with him when he met Luochio. But if she couldn't find him or found the wrong one, she could only rely on herself. At this time, Su Zijuan walked to the entrance of the distorted space expressionlessly, but when she was about to enter, she suddenly stopped. She turned back and looked at Luochio, saying suddenly, "I want to talk to you alone." Luochio nodded, then let Yi walk to his side. He whispered something in her ear and then walked to one side. Miss May didn't follow him. Su Zijuan glanced at her and then winked at Jessica. Then she followed Luochio into the woods. Both of them had disappeared from everyone's sight. Jessica felt a little uneasy at this moment because Miss Maid was walking towards her. "Miss Jessica?" To Jessica's surprise, Miss Maid asked her first. Jessica hesitated for a while and then nodded. "What's the matter?" Yi didn't say anything. She just smiled faintly and then approached Jessica. Under Jessica's surprised gaze, she grabbed her wrist. Jessica was startled, but she was patient. Her intuition told her that this maid didn't mean any harm, and the arm that was grabbed was the one that was hurt by Green Lotus Sword Song's sword energy when she touched him out of curiosity. Miss Maid's fingers moved on Jessica's long wound bit by bit. The wound started to heal. Actually, Jessica's body also had self-healing ability, but it wasn't as strong as Su Zijuan's. The wound had been covered with Qin Chuyu's medicinal powder, so it had healed long ago. But Green Lotus Sword Song's sword energy was too powerful, so it would take at least a few days for the wound to heal completely. But now, well, there shouldn't be any problem. Yi let go of Jessica's arm. "Take a look. Is there any discomfort?" It only took a few seconds for the wound to heal. Jessica moved her arm, then frowned and asked confusedly, "Why, this is my master's idea." Yi said softly, "It's free. Is this place okay?" Luochio looked around. The towering trees were like a barrier, making the surroundings very quiet. Su Zijuan nodded at this moment. "Miss Zijuan, is there anything I can help you with?" Su Zijuan thought for a while, and suddenly said, "You still keep those evil souls, right?" "Of course." Luochio nodded. Speaking of which, before the deal with Su Zijuan, Luochio's financial status had been in a state of balance. But because of the deal with Su Zijuan, Luochio started to have a lot of surplus. Since then, Boss Luo had a little bit of capital to be unrestrained. "I still have some ceiling points with me," Yi Zichen said. Su Zijuan went straight to the point, "But it's still the same as last time. You need to get it. But don't worry, I won't go back on my words. Can I record them?" The locations are Shenangjia, Xiok Singenling, Tianshan Lake. These three first. Luochio nodded. "No problem. I believe Miss Su Zijuan won't go back on her words. I mean, Miss Zijuan can record them. Because she was rich. Su Zijuan was really rich. As the princess of the Xinyuan royal family, as the only one who had the ability to open the seal of the evil souls, she was really, really rich. I ask, you answer. I'll stop when it's time." Su Zijuan nodded. "Let's start from Tianshan Lake." Luochio closed his eyes and said after a while, "The total number of evil souls is 14,796. right? Su Zijun looked at this man strangely. She had a feeling that all her wealth was calculated by this man, and he knew it even better than she did. Wasn't it infuriating? Sort of. Su Zijun said casually. Luochio blinked and asked curiously, Miss Zijun, don't know how many evil souls are in the seal of the Xianyuan royal family in Tianshan Lake. It's none of your business. Su Zijun was super fierce. Let's start. Luochio smiled. Su Zijun rolled her eyes and said after a while, First question, is this Peng Lai? You told me last time that a large number of evil souls are needed to open Peng Lai. 10 evil souls, Luochio said. This is not Peng Lai. This is the Peng Lai treasure vault. What's the difference? Su Zijun was stunned. 5,000 evil souls. You're a vampire. The first and second questions are F** king, 50 times more expensive? Su Zijun couldn't help but want to curse and continue being super fierce. Miss Zijun, it should be 500 times more expensive. It's none of your business. You're so noisy. Su Zijun showed her canine teeth. Continue. Did I ask you to stop? Peng Lai does exist. Just like the Peng Lai that you know, Miss Zijun, there were immortals who would fulfill the wishes of those who reached Peng Lai. Luochio said slowly, as for this Peng Lai treasure vault, it's actually a replica of Peng Lai. The biggest difference between Peng Lai and Peng Lai treasure vault is that there are fewer places to choose from in Peng Lai treasure vault. Be more specific. Su Zijun frowned. Don't worry. Luochio smiled. How about this? I'll give you an example. You should be able to understand. Peng Lai treasure vault can only buy real things, but Peng Lai can buy things other than real things. Peng Lai treasure vault is based on a technology. In theory, it can create more than 99% of all known substances. However, it can't do some illusory things, for example, luck. This technology can't be done, and it won't appear in the treasure vault's list. But for most people, the treasure vault is actually enough to satisfy them. Su Zijun said with a strange expression, Hey, let's not talk about the treasure vault first. Why do I feel that Peng Lai is so weird? Miss Zijun, what do you want to say? Luochio said indifferently. Su Zijun gritted her teeth. Peng Lai you? Luochio looked at Su Zijun, and Su Zijun suddenly felt a little guilty. The former princess of a Xianyuan royal family frowned and said, Tell me, how many evil souls do you want this time? Not this time. Chapter 1074. Luochio and Su Zijun walked out of the woods one after the other. It didn't take long for them to come out of the woods. Luochio was still using the original formula, while Su Zijun was wearing a long face. Master! Miss Maid walked over and glanced at Su Zijun, but Su Zijun didn't notice it. Miss Qin, have you woken up? Not yet, but I think she will wake up soon. Luochio nodded, but he found that Jessica's eyes had been fixed on him ever since he came back. He looked at Jessica and saw her lips moving slightly, as if she wanted to say something. Luochio shook his head slightly. Jessica was stunned for a while. Then she nodded slightly and walked to Su Zijun silently. Unexpectedly, Su Zijun said, I'll act alone for a while. You follow this guy. Don't worry, you'll be safe. And you're here to locate my location. So, even if you're going to die, you have to follow me and don't lose yourself. Master? Jessica was stupefied again. But Su Zijun didn't say anything. She jumped several times and disappeared into the boundless woods. Luochio came to Jessica and said softly, Miss Jessica, can we talk for a while? Jessica hesitated for a while and nodded at last. Of course, they didn't go into the woods this time. They just stood under the tree, casually. Jessica opened her mouth first. She looked at Luochio with a strange, different, and relieved expression. She smiled faintly. The complicated feelings in her eyes disappeared after this smile, leaving only a trace of reminiscence. She said, Speaking of which, the last time I saw you was also the last time I saw you. You were wearing a clown mask at that time. I just wanted to avoid some unnecessary troubles. Luochio said indifferently, It's not necessary now. So, when did you find out? Jessica showed a puzzled expression. Luochio recalled and said, I still remember that you gave me 2 letters at the very beginning. Of course, the conditions of the 2 letters changed later on. But what makes me curious is, how did you determine that I would definitely write the contents of the second letter? At that time, you shouldn't have been able to see through the concealment ability of the mask, but you already knew it was me? So there's something you don't know? Jessica blinked her eyes. Luaccio shook his head and said, "There are a lot of things that I don't know. Besides, if I know everything, there will be less anticipation, won't there?" "What you said before," Jessica suddenly said faintly. Luaccio didn't say anything. Indeed, the man Jessica mentioned had a great influence on his growth. "Can you tell me, is he okay?" Jessica looked at Luaccio with expectation. "Perhaps. I can't buy it." But before Jessica said anything, Luaccio interrupted her directly. "He's fine now. Don't worry." "I see," Jessica murmured thoughtfully and absent-mindedly. In the end, she leaned against the tree trunk and lowered her head, seemingly thinking about something. Luaccio didn't disturb her. Moreover, he was always patient. The smell of perfume. Jessica suddenly raised her head and looked at Luaccio's puzzled eyes. She smiled. "Aren't you curious about how I found you? It's because of the smell of perfume on your body." "Perfume?" Jessica nodded. "I guess men aren't good at it. But for women, it's quite obvious. To tell you the truth, I actually sneaked into your room and installed a bug. I think you know the specific reason without me telling you. I smelled the smell of perfume in your room at that time. After that, when I contacted you in the club, I smelled the same perfume again." Luaccio gave a start. "Only based on this." Jessica glanced at the servant girl behind Luaccio, pursing her lips and smiling. "So men, this perfume is called Blackberry Muse. It's produced by a French manufacturer. What's more, yours should be the rarest special edition. There are less than 100 bottles of it in the world. This smell is very special. I've encountered it once when I was handling a case before, so I've remembered it. How could I not have some thoughts when I encountered such a rare perfume in the city where you live?" Although I was also shocked at that time. Luaccio didn't have the habit of wearing perfume, so there was only one possibility. The smell of perfume was probably from Yu Yi. "Oh, I see." Luaccio smiled. This wasn't a flaw. But Jessica blinked her eyes. "Speaking of which, a woman's perfume is like a mark. A man who is stained with the smell of a woman's perfume is like a declaration of sovereignty. A smart woman won't get close to you easily. That lady is a perfect match for you. Miss Su Zijuan entrusted us to protect you before she leaves." Luaccio changed the topic without any pressure. Naturally, Jessica even had an illusion that what they were talking about just now didn't exist. Jessica sighed and smiled bitterly. "You're really good at changing the topic. You've really learned from Yin. He is also like this. But anyway, it seems that I have to trouble you for the next step." "Not at all." Luaccio shook his head. Thinking of the servant girl's treatment, Jessica said, "Don't worry, I won't tell Yin about you. I won't ask you anything either. Everyone has some secrets that they don't want others to know." "Thank you very much." Luaccio nodded. Jessica said faintly, "I'm the one who should thank you. Though it's a little late, I still want to thank you for the Christmas present." Luaccio said coldly, "You seem to have some changes in your body, which can further develop your original ability. At the same time, your body can also bear it. This may be a good thing." Jessica opened her mouth, but Luaccio turned around and walked away as if he didn't say anything, because Qin Shiyu just woke up at this moment. Jessica lowered her head, thinking about Luaccio's words. She murmured with a complicated expression, "Is it a good thing? But I'm not a human anymore. Qin Shiyu should have learned something from Yu Yi." Perhaps this woman's temperament was really cold to the bone. She didn't mention anything about what happened after she fainted, nor did she mention anything about the clothes on her body. She just looked at Luaccio and mentioned the Green Lotus Sword song, asking directly, "Tell me, how much do I have to pay to wake up the sword spirit in the Green Lotus Sword song?" Luaccio asked, "Is it very important to you?" "It's related to my master's whereabouts." Qin Shiyu nodded, not hiding anything. She knew it was useless to hide it. If he wanted to know, he could know it. As a customer who had dealt with him, she was very clear about his ability. Luaccio thought for a while, suddenly saying, "Then why didn't Miss Cheen buy the information about your master directly? I think it's more efficient this way. It's enough to wake up the sword spirit." Cheen Shiyu looked at Luochio in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, but her eyes slightly trembled. "I understand." Luochio nodded, then reached out his hand. Cheen Shiyu obviously understood Luochio's intention. She hesitated for a while, then finally grasped the hilt of the green lotus sword song, holding it upside down. "Be careful." After Luochio took the green lotus sword song easily, the green lotus sword song didn't do anything. Cheen Shiyu couldn't help but stare blankly. "Don't worry, Miss Cheen, I won't break it," Luochio said casually, then started to size up this obedience sword again. Cheen Shiyu obviously didn't mean that. She thought Luochio might have misunderstood. She just wanted to remind this boss that the green lotus sword song could hurt people. But what surprised her was that the green lotus sword song was so quiet right now. There's indeed a sleeping soul inside. Luochio stroked the body of the green lotus sword song. After a while, he continued, "According to Miss Cheen's current situation, there are two ways to wake it up. One is to wake it up directly, the other is to wake it up through Miss Cheen. What I need to do?" Cheen Shiyu was obviously more inclined to wake up the green lotus sword song herself. Luochio looked at Cheen Shiyu, then said slowly, "Miss Cheen, you should know our rules." Cheen Shiyu didn't say anything, but nodded directly. Then, she touched her ear. She had been wearing a pearl earring, but only one side. Taking out the earring, Cheen Shiyu said indifferently, "There are things I've collected over the years. See if it's enough." The earring was placed on Luochio's palm. Luochio felt it for a while, then said, "It's really rich. There are enough things inside. What does Miss Cheen want to exchange for it?" "Anything." "Then, I'll just take it away randomly." Luochio nodded. At this moment, an ancient sheepskin scroll appeared in front of Cheen Shiyu. She pressed her fingerprint on it without thinking. "The soul inside this sword is not complete." Luochio said, "If Miss Cheen wants to wake it up, we'll give you the following solutions. First, you need to practice your green lotus sword technique to the 9th level. Second, you need to find the other part of its soul. When these two things are done, it will be able to wake up." "Not complete?" Cheen Shiyu's expression changed slightly. Then she realized, no wonder, no matter how I try to communicate with it, I can't get in touch with it. Luochio just gave the earring back to Cheen Shiyu. After receiving it, Cheen Shiyu checked it carefully. She found that about 1/5 of the collection inside the earring was missing. She couldn't help glancing at Luochio again. She found that the missing items were basically more than one item. He didn't take away the single item. After putting the earring back on her ear silently, Cheen Shiyu carried green lotus sword and walked to one side. She sat down with her legs crossed and put green lotus sword on her legs. Then, she closed her eyes. After a short while, Cheen Shiyu seemed to have entered the state of forgetting everything around her. Why didn't she choose a more direct way? Jessica walked over slowly and asked Luochio curiously. Luochio looked at Cheen Shiyu. A fallen leaf fell on her shoulder, but it didn't disturb her concentration. Luochio flicked his finger to move the leaf to the ground. Then he said softly, maybe she felt scared. Scared? Scared of knowing the truth. After a while, Daz, who went to meet them, brought 100 Tribulation Taoist and Wang Hu over without any hindrance. What made Luochio troubled was that 100 Calamity Taoist, who requested this service, insisted that he wouldn't leave until the end, and Wang Hu also said that he would stay with 100 Calamity Taoist. Su Zijuan went to Solo, leaving Jessica as the location. Judging from Cheen Shiyu's situation, she probably wouldn't leave right away. She probably wanted to find more clues about her master here. Because it wasn't mandatory and was only time-sensitive, Luochio found that the promotion of the content of this transaction was still 0. It's a bit difficult to deal with this. Luochio looked at the team that suddenly expanded and couldn't help but frown. He always felt that he was cheated for food and drinks. They seemed to be aimless along the way, and this team was very silent all the time. Except for Luo Dance, who would say a few words from time to time, the rest basically didn't talk much. Just like his name, the owner of Ghost City basically didn't talk along the way. Long Shuo was like a guide, walking and walking all the way. She would stop for a while and then continue to move forward. Every time she stopped and moved forward again, Long Shuo's expression would become more dignified. Luo Dance felt that Sister Long seemed to be very tired, and her face unconsciously became pale. Unconsciously, they were about to arrive at the seemingly distant, towering mountain peak, and at this time, Long Shuo stopped again. She lowered her head and looked forward. At this time, they were standing on a hillside. Looking at Long Shuo's lowered head and frowned, which was different from before, Luo Dance couldn't help but ask curiously, "Sister Long, what's wrong with you?" "No, something is wrong here," Long Shuo murmured at this time. "There should be a crack leading to the underground." "Crack?" Luo Dance was stunned, looking down, only to see a flat ground under the hillside. "There should be?" Unexpectedly, the owner of Ghost City, Xiao Shengma, said coldly at this time, "According to Lord Long's words, has he been here before? What else do you know?" Long Shuo subconsciously looked at Xiao Shengma. This pale, middle-aged guy was looking at them with gloomy eyes. Found. Chapter 1075. The light beam penetrated the clouds and fell on the ground, followed by a violent explosion and destruction, sweeping over everything. A corner of the hillside was destroyed in an instant, raising dust that covered the sky and the sun. A team of 12 Gaias landed slowly at this time. Their eyes flashed, apparently searching for possible signs of life. But at this moment, a figure broke through the rumbling smoke and dust. Two cold beams of light flashed as the two silver daggers in Ghost Child's hands crisscrossed, leaving behind an X-shaped wound on the back of one of the Gaias. Although it was a wound, it was so shallow that it was only a slight white mark. Ghost Baby was startled, but he saw the Gaia's head turned strangely at an inhuman angle, 180 degrees. A child, Ghost Baby was shocked, but the Gaia's arm also waved at Ghost Baby at an incredible angle. The hand cannon had turned into a sharp blade. The Ghost Child dodged in a hurry, but his clothes were ripped open. He held the daggers in both hands and looked around. Seeing the Gaias floating above the ground and gathering around, he couldn't help but frown. At this time, Luo Dance flew out of the smoke with Long Shuo in her arms. Chi-Chi Kamaya and Silent Flute also flew out from different angles. They saw the people who attacked them at the same time. To be exact, it was a species they had never seen before. The team of 12 Gaias spread out without saying a word and attacked the group of people on their own. "Watch out!" Chi-Chi Kamaya hurriedly shouted at this time. The speed of these enemies who looked like little girls made the old turtle feel that things were not good. As a clerk in the pet hospital and a new monster in her 70s, Luo Dance had little combat experience even though her monster power had been greatly improved because of Su Zijuan. She could only hold Long Shuo in panic and move to the left side when facing the Gaias that suddenly flashed in front of her. But the attacking Gaia's arm with the ability of transformation turned into a sharp blade and easily cut Luo Dance's back. Blood splashed in the air, and Luo Dance directly fell to the ground. At this time, Long Shuo broke free from Luo Dance's arms and looked back, only to see Luo Dance lying on the ground with a painful expression. There was an arm-length wound on her back. "Sister Long, go," Luo Dance said weakly and closed her eyes. "Light Fairy," Long Shuo hurriedly said. She clasped the orb in her palm, and it glowed faintly. The situation became grim in an instant. Almost at the same time, Ghost Child was knocked to the ground. The 4 Gaias besieged Ghost Child, giving him no time to react. Under the siege of the other 3 Gaias, Xiao Shengmo relied on the special body of the Ghost Race to remain undefeated. However, this Ghost City Lord did not intend to take the initiative to attack at this time. Chi-Chi Kamaya had already pulled out the sword hidden in his crutch. This old guy had analyzed the terrible part of this team in an instant. Under the great desire to survive, he had already entered the state of full strength early. With the 1-meter-long sword in his hand and flexible swordsmanship, Chi-Chi Kamaya fought against the 3 Gaias alone, but it seemed that his defeat was only a matter of time. Gui Qianlong was old and no longer as brave as he used to be. Tortoise was not a species that would become stronger the longer it lived, not to mention that he had already seen his limit. His life was going downhill rapidly. Right at this moment, a deep dragon roar sounded. Chichi Kamaya and the others who lived in Kelowna, these people who belonged to Kelowna, at this moment seemed to hear the angry voice from the depths of their soul, the anger from the faith of Kelowna. The body created by Shinryu in Kelowna, with the ability of Chichi Kamaya's orb and the essence blood of Long Shiro as the source of power, it could restore part of the combat power of Long Shiro in a short time. Beside Luo Dance, Long Shiro's small body stood still. In front of her, the body created by Shinryu was floating more than 2 meters above the ground expressionlessly. Around the body, the 3 Gaias had already fallen to the ground. Their chests seemed to be penetrated by something. At the same time, the body was holding the head of a Gaia in its hand. Master, Long, Ghost Baby, who fell to the ground and was in a precarious situation, struggled to get up, only to feel a gentle force grabbing his body and pulling him to Long Shiro's side. Don't talk, take care, Dance. The body was slightly stunned. Let me deal with these things first. Then the body waved to Ghost Baby, and a golden light was injected into his body. His wound didn't recover, but his physical strength was greatly replenished. Ghost Baby looked down at the little butterfly monster and found that the wound on her back had been stopped by the golden light, but the wound didn't heal. It seemed that the biggest threat here was the body of creation. Several Gaias gave up attacking Gui, Qianni, and Silent Flute at the same time, leaving only 2 Gaias to distract each other and quickly rushed to the body of creation. At this time, the body flashed with a golden light, and the whole body turned into a huge golden dragon. The golden dragon easily penetrated the bodies of the Gaias. The scene of Gaia's body exploding appeared in the sky one after another. Finally, the golden dragon swam down from the sky and finished off the 2 Gaias who were restraining Gui, Qianni, and Xiaoshima at a very fast speed. They turned back into its human form and landed on the ground. Chichi Kamaya frowned and looked at Long Shiro. Her small face was slightly pale. Every time the body was created, it burned Long Shiro's essence and blood. But now, Long Shiro couldn't get Kelowna's protection from the earth, nor could she continuously replenish her strength from the earth. Relying on her own recovery rate, every time she used the creation body, she would not be able to replenish it. But Silent Xiao was shocked by the power of the body creation. This was the power of Shinryu that the transcendence of Kelowna knew. At this time, the body creation suddenly looked at Silent Xiao. The eyes of the ghost city's mayor flickered. At the same time, the body creation looked at a certain place in the sky. Chichi Kamaya, take the people and leave. What? Chichi Kamaya was shocked. In the sky, figures flew over, and with a rough look, there were no less than 100 Gaias. Get on this one, Silent Xiao said in a deep voice. At this time, he opened his mouth, and a black wind floated out of his mouth and turned into a huge black fog. The black fog dispersed, and a huge carriage appeared. In front of it, there were 4 black bulls pulling the carriage. This was the ghost city's mayor, Silent Xiao's carriage. The 4 black bulls pulling the carriage were also not ordinary creatures. Everyone quickly got on the carriage. Silent Xiao patted the black bull in front, and the carriage soared into the sky. At this moment, the body of creation transformed into a golden dragon once again, and it faced the 100+ Gaias alone. The carriage went far away, and only the golden dragon could be seen in the sky, and a large number of light beams scattered in the sky. Chichi Kamaya looked away. His scalp was a little numb. Mayor Xiao, can it be faster? He knew that Long Shiro used the body creation to burn her essence blood, and the longer it took, the heavier the burden on the body. The ghost city's mayor silently nodded and pulled the reins with both hands. The black bulls in front of them cried out, and the carriage flew hundreds of meters away. Then the carriage plunged into the ground. This carriage was also a ghost and had a strange ability. It directly sank into the ground and traveled under the ground. After a while, Long Shuo in the carriage opened her eyes, but her face was pale. "How is it?" Chichi Kamaya quickly stepped forward and put one hand on Long Shuo's wrist. Long Shuo shook her head and pulled her hand out. She frowned and said, "I killed dozens of them, but there are still many left. I don't want to waste time with them. What about Pianxian? How's her injury?" Chichi Kamaya hurriedly said, "You stopped the bleeding, but there is a strange force in her body. I can't get rid of it for a while, and can only barely suppress it. This strange power is very strange. It keeps destroying Agile's body. If she hadn't evolved, I reckon that this slash would have. This thing is like a puppet." Long Shuo frowned at this time. "When I fought with them, I found that they seemed to have no thoughts. It's very strange. Their bodies are like human beings, but they have the ability to change, and they are like machines." "Don't talk, eat this." Chichi Kamaya took out a bottle and poured out a few pills. Long Shuo nodded. After losing the ability to get replenishment from the earth, her recovery was very slow. Chichi Kamaya's elixir could only slightly increase the current speed of her body's blood production. Seeing Long Shuo sitting cross-legged and digesting the elixir, Chichi Kamaya was relieved. But he couldn't help but worry about the unknown things that would happen next. "City Lord Xiao, where's this carriage going?" Chichi Kamaya looked at Xiao Xingma, who was driving the carriage, and frowned. "The mountain." Xiao Xingma didn't look back at this time and indifferently said, "From here, we should be able to get close to its bottom." Chichi Kamaya's eyes slightly shrank and suddenly said, "City Lord Xiao seems to have done it deliberately." "Old turtle, this Xiao doesn't understand." Xiao Xingma indifferently said. Chichi Kamaya said in a deep voice, "Although the goal of that mountain is clear, we encountered a strong enemy and hurriedly escaped. Why did City Lord Xiao choose to go in the direction of that mountain? Now the number of unknown enemies is large and powerful. That mountain may be their headquarters. This old man really doesn't understand why City Lord wants to go in the direction of the tiger, even though he knows that there are tigers in the mountain." To get something, Xiao Shengma turned his head at this time, and on his ghostly face, there was a strange smile that moved people like a sneer. "Get something?" Chichi Kamaya narrowed his eyes, but quietly made a gesture to the ghost baby. The ghost baby's palm secretly moved, and a cold dagger quietly appeared. But at this time, inside the carriage, where they were, a small 7-story pagoda appeared out of thin air. 10,000 Ghost Pagoda. Chichi Kamaya was suddenly shocked. At this time, this small pagoda unexpectedly produced a huge suction force, and in a flash, everyone was sucked into this small pagoda. Inside the carriage, only Xiao Xingma, who was driving the carriage, was left. Entrusted by someone, please don't blame me. That small pagoda slowly flew to Xiao Xingma's side and landed under his seat. Xiao Xingma's expression was still cold, and with a wave of the reins in his hand, the carriage's speed increased again. After an unknown amount of time, the carriage finally left the dark underground. There was no feeling of oppression in the surroundings, and the carriage directly flew out of the rock, entering an extremely spacious space. At this time, Xiao Xingma's expression changed. It became dignified. In front of him, there was a huge thing. It went deep underground, and at the same time, it also led to the surface like a huge pagoda, and one couldn't see the bottom and also couldn't see the top. In front of this huge pagoda, the carriage was like a microorganism. The whole body of this huge pagoda was made of some kind of metal. Xiao Xingma drove the carriage, quickly climbing up, and soon, the carriage arrived at the entrance of this huge metal pagoda. The square entrance was huge and dark, and the carriage rushed into this entrance, disappearing into a long passage. The hard soil and rock were breaking apart little by little. After that, something seemed to crawl out of the soil. Soon, it completely broke free from the soil. However, it suddenly lost gravity and fell down heavily. It was a turtle shell, a huge one, as big as a bedroom. At this moment, several figures rushed out of the tortoise shell. and the tortoiseshell luckily stopped on a protruding rock platform. This group was obviously Ming Tushan, Immortal Huanyang, and the others, who tried to explore the edge of the underground to find a way out after parting with 100 Tribulation Taoist. This is the end? What the hell is this? Obviously, Ming Tushan couldn't distinguish the direction in the dark underground, so he could only control the turtle shell to dive down, and finally came to this place. Looking at the thing that shocked Immortal Huanyang, Ming Tushan's face was full of shock. I've lived for so many years, but I've never seen such a huge thing. The so-called world-class skyscrapers of humans were like laughable toys compared to this. It was incomparably huge, and its entire body was made of metal. There were countless window-like areas, and it was like a giant tower that was buried underground. Yin 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 Yin. Chapter 1076. In the pure white space. Taiyinzi's screams gradually stopped. At this time, he could no longer maintain his disguise. His body had already turned into a mass of black mist. Gradually, something separated from the mist. There were balls of gray light and a small brocade box. This mass of light was Taiyinzi's soul. At this time, when his soul separated from the black fog, the crystal that trapped him suddenly shone brightly. At the same time, another crystal also shone with the same degree of light. The light filled the entire pure white space. After an unknown amount of time, Taiyinzi's soul disappeared beside the black fog, replaced by a mass of golden light. This golden ball of light was originally in another crystal pillar. Interaction. Taiyinzi's soul had been transferred to another crystal pillar. At this time, the golden ball of light suddenly crashed into the black fog. At this time, the black fog in the crystal pillar was like boiling water, rolling nonstop. It was like ink that had been scattered into water, gradually spreading out. His body, his four limbs, his head, his silhouette, everything gradually became clear. Finally, a grayish-black body appeared in the crystal pillar. It was as if it had gone through countless calculations to possess a perfectly proportioned body. Without a doubt, this was a perfect reminder of the existence of the god in the fantasy, but its gender could not be seen. It had a perfect face, but it did not have any male or female characteristics, a person without sex. The moment this body was completed, the crystal pillar suddenly softened, like a liquid suddenly pouring down and sprinkling on the pedestal. This almost perfect, grayish-black body stood quietly on the pedestal. Finally, it slowly opened its eyes. At the moment when it opened its eyes, there was a hint of joy hidden in its eyes. It lowered its head to look at its own body, looked at its own hands, even closed its eyes again, took a deep breath, and showed a look of enjoyment. Finally, its voice was not sharp or low, but it was very pleasant to hear. But its happy mood did not last long. It could even be said to be very short. It abruptly opened its eyes, and the joy in its eyes was replaced by a touch of anger. Why is the foreign body source content so low? Gaia. Prototype Universal Treasure Vault Manager Gaia. At your service, respected Treasure Vault creator. Prototype Universal Treasure Vault? It frowned. Why is it a prototype and not a special combat Valkyrie? Reply. All the special combat Valkyrie Gaias have been killed. Killed? It was slightly surprised, and with a frown, it looked at the prototype Gaia and said in a deep voice, "Open the memory system." Understood. Many cracks suddenly appeared on the body of the Gaia prototype. As the cracks split apart, the body of the Gaia prototype was split into two, starting from the upper body. A rhombus-shaped crystal appeared in the split body. It walked up to the crystal, reached for it, and closed its eyes. After a while, it opened its eyes again, but this time, its face was gloomy. There is a subscriber in the treasure vault. Impossible. I have closed the entrance and rejected all visitors. Why would there be such a powerful force in this world? This is obviously beyond the script written by Araya003. But the script should be fixed. There's only one possibility to rewrite the script. Its expression changed greatly, and then it strode to the white pillar in the middle of the two crystal pillars. It started to operate the crystal pillar that trapped Tianzi's soul. Suddenly, there was a colorful, liquid-like substance in the crystal pillar. Not long after, the colorful substance started to change, and in the end, it became a 30-centimeter long metal statue that looked like a dog. At this time, Tainzi's soul was forced into the strange metal dog statue by a strange force. Wake up! The metal statue that looked like a dog slowly opened its eyes. Tainzi regained his vision, and he felt that his surroundings had suddenly become huge. And in front of him, there was a man that even he thought was unbelievably beautiful. Wait, this man doesn't seem to have a lower part. What's the situation? Tainzi subconsciously wanted to rub his chin. Unexpectedly, the next scene made Tainzi turn pale with fright. He stared blankly at the reflection on the crystal, looking at his current appearance. A dog. I actually became a dog. This was obviously not the ability of Onyx Soul. Tainzi could not feel the feeling when he was Onyx Soul. When the heavy body moved, there was a sound of metal colliding. You, what did you do to me? Who are you? De Cray, it said calmly. You can call me Earl de Cray, one of the people in charge of Eternal Kingdom's highest research organization. I don't care who you are. Quickly turn me back to my original appearance. Tainzi could not accept that he had become an old dog, and an old metal dog at that. I don't care what Earl you are. Let me tell you, if my master knows about this, you're dead. Your master? De Cray was expressionless, but it opened its 5 fingers towards Tainzi. At this moment, Tainzi felt that his brain, he did not know if he still had a brain, it was just a feeling, was about to explode. At the same time, 2 rays of light shot out from the metal dog's eyes. The rays of light were like a projection. Scenes after scenes were displayed on the light screen, projected by the 2 rays of light. These were all the experiences of Tainzi in his life. These memories were projected in a short period of time. After a while, the rays of light from the 2 dog eyes stopped. Tainzi's limbs were weak, and he collapsed to the ground as though hundreds of metal dogs had attacked him. De Cray's expression was frighteningly gloomy, and his cold gaze was fixed on Tainzi. So you are the student of the person who broke in my treasure vault and destroyed my entire battle group. De Cray laughed coldly. What a coincidence. I don't know what you're talking about, but my master will not let you off. Tainzi felt that when he said this, he did not have much confidence. But this was the only way to scare the other party. This was definitely related to the club. It's a pity that the representative of Origin is only a newbie. De Cray laughed coldly. If it was the previous representative, I wouldn't have done anything. Even if I knew that I was being schemed against, I wouldn't have done anything. Tainzi struggled to get up. De Cray laughed coldly. You are not the thing required by the contract, but due to a freak combination of factors, it became you. That's really good. I'll remember this. You are the club sponsor? Tainzi finally realized something, but De Cray ignored him. Instead, he turned around and looked at the brocade box separated from Tainzi's body on the pedestal. That brocade box slowly flew into De Cray's hand, and he easily opened it. This made Tainzi shocked. The thing inside the brocade box was related to an extremely important secret of his sect. Do you know what this is? De Cray looked at Tainzi with a mysterious expression. I don't know. Tainzi turned his head, but when he thought of this guy forcibly scanning his memories, Tainzi was frightened. What do you want to do? In your eyes, this is the thing of the so-called immortals. De Cray laughed coldly and slowly took out the thing inside the brocade box. In your so-called Penglai convention, the final sacrifice is to use this thing to summon the legendary Penglai immortal to fulfill your wishes, right? It was a palm with a severed wrist. But the funny thing is, this Penglai immortal has died long ago. I killed him. De Cray laughed coldly. Although I don't know why his palm was lost and passed your sect, it still came back to me in the end. Do you know what this means? What does it mean? Your master is just a newly appointed agent. De Cray laughed lightly. He has been appointed for less than a year and is too lazy. I am afraid he is still worrying about the passing of his life. Right? Beautiful soul? Ridiculous for such a thing. He didn't even accumulate his own strength. Such a guy. I am afraid he hasn't even opened the door to the multidimensional world. No, I am afraid he doesn't even have the authority to rewrite. No, He might not even have the authority to influence the sub-administrator of this 003 main world, Araya. I don't understand. Peng Lai's master is already dead, but his authority from the origin is still there. As long as I replace him and make up for the transaction amount he said he owed, then the authority of Peng Lai will be transferred to me. De Cray laughed maniacally. I originally thought that after this rebirth, I would be able to replace Peng Lai and become the sub-agent of the origin. I didn't expect that the agent would be just a newcomer. Ha 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 ha. Tianzi opened his mouth. He still couldn't understand what this guy, who seemed to have his head stuck in the door or was in a daze inside the crystal, was saying, but it seemed like this guy had the ability to kill his boss. Should I defect to the enemy? But at this moment, a vibration suddenly came from this pure white space. De Cray frowned and reached out his hand to touch the pillar beside him, only to see a large number of blue screens appear around him. On them were images of the Peng Lai treasury. De Cray's gaze quickly landed on one of them, which was clearly the place where the myriad essence pool was located. Special combat type Valkyrie class. De Caria's brows furrowed even deeper. Maximizing production. Who gave this order? This is a waste of my myriad essence. Stop. However, when De Cray's palm hit the surface of the pillar, the printing in the myriad essence pool didn't stop. At the same time, a message appeared in front of De Cray. Insufficient authority. Sub-level authority, damn it. De Cray suddenly looked at Tianzi and said angrily, "You inferior product." Tianzi was very angry. "I don't want to. What can I do?" But he had no choice, so he could only continue lying down. But the thought of defecting to the enemy was instantly dispelled. It seemed like because of him, there were some flaws in this guy's plan. But De Cray only glared fiercely at Tianzi before walking towards Prototype Gaia. He returned to Prototype Gaia's appearance and said with a stern tone, "All the combat types should have died. Why is there still an order to be on the highest alert?" Reason unknown. De Cray frowned. Think, analyze. Intelligent program severely damaged. Analysis program unable to start. You trash. De Cray cursed angrily. He bit his finger and paced back and forth. Then, he quickly walked to the front of the pillar. His consciousness had just awakened from a deep slumber, and there were many things he didn't know. He needed to understand the situation further. The mainframe stopped. Is it because the mainframe was affected when we annihilated that unusual combat power? De Cray quickly checked the situation in the myriad essence pool and slammed the pillar in exasperation. The intelligence of the prototype Gaia has degenerated to the lowest level, no different from baby. Only the prototype Gaia can respond to the hidden orders I gave. The newly printed one doesn't have my hidden orders. Damn it, this sub-level authority. Even if it's only level 2 authority, it's fine. Tianzi shrunk back. Even though the space inside the crystal pillar was small, he felt that this guy who had his head crushed by a door would vent his anger on him in the next second. I need to restart the mainframe and bind to this identity. Only then can I take back the absolute control of the treasury. De Cray took a deep breath and seemed to have calmed down. Prototype Gaia, follow me to the main control room. De Cray, who had regained his composure, once again issued orders to Prototype Gaia. Currently, only this Gaia could respond to his orders. In the following operations, he would need this Prototype Gaia in many places. This new body's possession of the alien source was extremely low. With that little authority, it couldn't even enter the main control room. Understood. De Cray turned around. The moment he turned around, he put on a strange attire that resembled a military uniform. Seeing Decria walk out with the prototype Gaia following behind him, Tianzi in the crystal pillar blinked his new pair of metal dog eyes. Chapter 1077. Many people gathered in the long and winding cave. They were mainly members of the administration, Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe. Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe were sitting cross-legged on the ground, trying to recover their strength. Before this, these two big shots of the 4 celestial races had already shared information with the 4 captains of the administration since they entered this place. When they heard the news that the elites of the two Kelowna Transcendent Associations had suffered heavy casualties, the captains of the administration were shocked. The few of them really couldn't imagine what kind of terrifying combat power was required to be able to fight the Tao Association and the Demon Association to the point where they were almost wiped out. Especially after hearing Tsang Jinshui's detailed description, they felt even more terrified of Gaia. Not long ago, when they were supporting Tsang Jinshui and Chu Xinghe, they had already seen how powerful Gaia was. If Hong Ling hadn't used the Godfall bullets at the beginning and caught one of the Gaias off guard, the difficulty of the battle would have increased exponentially. But according to Tsang Jinshui, there were more than 100 of such Gaias. Ling Feng couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Fortunately, he didn't directly mine the precious resources here at the beginning. Otherwise, the administration would have been treated by one of the Gaias, and then collectively sung a song of doom. At this time, a member quietly came in front of Ling Feng and the other captains and shook his head. "We still can't contact the headquarters. Our signal is completely cut off." "Got it. Go and count our battle supplies." Ling Feng nodded and waved his hand to let the member go to work. "Ling Feng, according to Tsang Jinshui, we might not be able to go out." At this time, the female Captain Hong Ling frowned. "Looks like you need to write more reports." Captain Ling Feng smiled bitterly. "It's not that I don't want to use the Godfall bullets. I'm just afraid that even if I use it, it will be difficult to get through this crisis. If something happens, just at this moment," Ling Feng suddenly stopped talking and looked as though he was concentrating. Seeing this, the other three captains' expressions turned serious. At this moment, in the depths of the cave, a strange sound suddenly came. This strange sound quickly alarmed Tsang Jinshui and Chu Xinghe, who were recovering their strength. Then, all the members of the administration were alerted. "It looks like something's coming out." Captain Ling Feng raised his hand slightly. All the members of the administration immediately picked up their weapons and spread out into a crescent formation. In the darkness, something seemed to be emerging from the depths of the cave. Closer, closer. It seemed to be a human figure. An overly nervous member of the Administrative Bureau subconsciously pulled the trigger on the special pistol in his hand when the figure was about to fully reveal itself. Wait. However, at this moment, Captain Ling Feng's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He immediately pressed down on the other party's wrist. Something's wrong. Finally, the figure was fully exposed in front of everyone. It was about 2 meters tall, but it was obviously not a human. It was actually a humanoid machine. It had strong limbs, but its legs were assembled in an anti-joint manner. Its head was like a flat metal plate with a black crystal in the middle. A little red light was flashing in the crystal. This was probably this guy's eye. However, the metal machine of this type of person seemed to be unable to see everyone in the cave. It walked straight ahead. Everyone nervously and cautiously stuck to both sides of the cave. The metal machine actually walked past silently. Amidst his bewilderment, a similar silhouette emerged from the darkness. What came out was actually another humanoid metal machine that was exactly the same as the first one. There was more than one. From the depths of the cave, a steady stream of these strange humanoid machines kept coming out. They kept a certain distance and appeared one after another. Even their speed was basically the same. In this strange situation, time passed very slowly. Finally, when the humanoid machines came out from the depths of the cave, several captains came together again. Tsang Jinshui and Chu Xinghe looked at each other in surprise. Not long after, they made a decision that was to quietly follow out and see what these humanoid machines wanted to do. The way out of the cave was very short. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of the cave. They once again saw these humanoid machines. They were not far away, but in front of them, and were doing something that surprised everyone. A metal machine was under a big tree at this time. A long needle slowly extended from its finger joint and then inserted into the trunk as if it was extracting something. Not far away, another metal machine was doing the same thing. At the same time, the legs of several other metal machines began to change and reorganize. Finally, a stream of air spurted out from the legs that turned into cylinders, pushing them into the air. Their arms opened and split open. There were countless small nozzles where the arms split open, and some mist was spurting out from these nozzles. They kept moving, and the mist slowly descended into the primeval forest like sprinkling water. Some of the metal machines were even clearing the weeds on the ground. They each had their own duties, but they were orderly. It's just like gardeners. No one knew who said this, but this statement quickly made everyone present realize, no wonder these metal machines turn a blind eye to everyone. They were probably just set to do forest management. They came out from inside. Captain Ling Feng, who finally reacted, frowned and said with a strange expression, "Could this be the entrance to their workstation? Captain, what should we do next? Let's go in and have a look." Ling Feng took a deep breath and said, "Maybe we can find some clues about this place inside. Since these humanoid machines came out from inside, there may be their communication system inside." Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe agreed with Captain Ling Feng's analysis. So the group sneaked into the depths of the cave while the humanoid machines were doing their gardener's work outside. They didn't encounter any danger on the way, and the group easily reached the end of the cave. They saw a huge metal door in the depths of the cave. Because they didn't know what kind of danger they would encounter inside, 2 of the 4 captains led 3 members to form an exploration team. They went through the metal door first, and the rest stayed on standby. Although they couldn't communicate with the outside world, communication tools could be used in this place. "We've gone through the passage, and we didn't encounter any danger. Over. Roger, over." While holding the walkie-talkie, one of the team members sent back images through the video camera. Gradually, everyone began to have an intuitive understanding of the depths of this cave. It was like the scene seen in countless sci-fi movies about the future, or rather, it was a more advanced setting. The camera turned, and before everyone woke up from the feeling of technology, a large number of hibernation chambers appeared in front of the camera. As the camera approached, the voice of one of the captains sounded at the same time. These containers seemed to be the resting places of the humanoid machines that just went out. In addition, many small mechanical arm-like things were found in the chambers, and they seemed to be able to repair the humanoid machines to a certain extent. In addition, we haven't encountered any danger, so there may be no defense here, or we haven't triggered it yet. Over. Roger, over. Captain Ling Feng put down the walkie-talkie and stared at the screen with a frown. At this time, the exploration team was unveiling the veil of this place bit by bit. Someone found something that looked like a gun. This thing could release beams of light, and when they hit the metal wall, traces of the metal wall would appear on the surface of the wall. There were also people who found many rod-shaped objects on the rows of what seemed to be tool racks. There were several buttons on them, and when one of them was pressed, the rod-shaped object suddenly shot out a beam of light that was about 1 meter long and did not dissipate. I'm afraid this is a technology similar to energy condensation. Incredible. How did such a strong energy shape it? Is it through a magnetic field? How much technology is contained in this rod? Ling Feng. Although the exploration of this place is incredible, I feel like I've walked into the laboratory of an advanced alien civilization. Over. Continue to explore and try to find a control center or something like that. Don't hesitate if there is danger. Retreat immediately. Over. Time passed little by little, and with the discovery of more incredible technology, Ling Feng even agreed with the words of the captain. Is this place really the laboratory of an advanced alien civilization? However, just as everyone was paying full attention to the exploration progress of the exploration team, a scream suddenly came from behind them. This sudden change made everyone turn around. They saw that in the cave, 3 small figures had appeared at some point in time, mass-produced combat type. Gaia. Damn it. Song Jinshui's face suddenly changed. He and Chu Xinghe, with the help of the administration, managed to eliminate 2 of them with great difficulty, but they didn't expect that they would find this place so quickly, and there were even 3 of them. The one who screamed had now fallen to the ground. There was a terrible wound on his chest, as if it was directly penetrated by a high-temperature power. The wound even emitted a burnt smell. A drop of cold sweat quietly slid down from Captain Ling Feng's forehead, and he swallowed his saliva. At this time, A loud voice sounded directly beside Captain Ling Feng. Hong Ling. At this moment, Captain Hong Ling did not hesitate and directly fired a shot at one of the three Gaia, using a magazine loaded with god-killing bullets. However, Hong Ling's unexpected shot did not hit the Gaia. Its body moved a few centimeters in an instant, and the bullet passed by it and shot into the rock wall. Hong Ling, who did not believe in superstition, gritted his teeth at this time, and a tongue of fire suddenly spat out from the M16A4 in his hand. The Gaias suspended in the air kept moving into the cave. In the dim cave, they were like ghosts, easily dodging Hong Ling's bullets. The magazine was emptied, and none of the Gaias were hit. Hong Ling was alarmed and wanted to change the magazine in a fluster. But at that instant, a Gaia had already rushed in front of her and raised the transformed red blade. Hong Ling. Ling Feng was shocked and terrified at this moment. At this moment, Song Jinshui suddenly rushed forward. A huge amount of demonic power transformed into a huge green claw. He swung it at the Gaia, blocking the attack of the Gaia, who attacked Hong Ling. At this moment, seeing that the person who saved her was Song Jinshui, a complicated look flashed in Hong Ling's eyes. Song Jinshui shouted at this moment, and suddenly pressed his hands on the ground. At the same time, several beams of light appeared from the ground, sealing the three Gaias at the same time. Song Jinshui said anxiously, "The terrain here is unfavorable to us. The power of these attacks is too terrifying. Quickly leave this place. I can only delay them for a while." Among the four celestial races, the Azure Dragon race was the race that was best at using sealing techniques. These green beams of light were probably some kind of Taoist technique that could seal the enemy's ability to move. At this moment, the three Gaias inside the beams of light were slowly moving, as if they were about to break out of the beams of light. "Why are you still in a daze, Run?" Song Jinshui angrily said. Ling Feng also wanted to retreat, but when she thought of the exploration team in the depths of the cave, she hesitated, but this hesitation did not last for long and instantly turned into panic. Song Jinshui fiercely spat out a mouthful of blood, and the beams of light disappeared. The three Gaias instantly broke out. It only took a few seconds. Unexpectedly, Song Jinshui's expression changed. The three Gaias closed in at this moment. This made Song Jinshui both shocked and angry. He roared, and his body was instantly covered with large amounts of green scales, preparing for a bitter battle. But at this moment, the body of the first Gaia to arrive suddenly split open. A long sword appeared in front of Song Jinshui, and a black-haired youth wearing a scarf. This youth, wearing casual clothes and scarf, but holding an ancient sword, smiled at Song Jinshui and instantly turned around, slashing at the other two Gaias. So fast, Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe were secretly shocked, thinking that if this seemingly simple sword slashed at them, would they be able to dodge it? At this moment, the two Gaias stopped. Facing this youth's attack, they did not seem to have any reaction. The ancient sword easily slashed at their bodies. In less than a few seconds, this youth had already dealt with the three Gaias. This made Song Jinshui and the others, who had fought bitterly with Gaias before, feel an indescribable feeling in their heart. Strange, why did these guys suddenly become like wood? The one just now too. After the youth dealt with the three Gaias, he stood in the same place, rubbing his chin, as if thinking about something. "Excuse me, you are?" Ling Feng was after all the head of the agency, so she had no choice but to brace herself and walk forward, trying to get in touch with this mysterious youth. Hearing this, the youth scratched his head and turned around. "Oh, sorry, I was thinking about something and got distracted. Are you all okay?" Ling Feng subconsciously nodded. But at this moment, the youth saw the agency member who was killed by Gaia at the beginning and frowned. One died. "I'm really sorry. I think I should be able to catch up, but I cleaned up some outside, so I was slower." "Outside?" The youth nodded. "Yes, outside the cave. These three should have sneaked in when I wasn't paying attention." "Cleaned up?" Ling Feng looked at the other captain, Hong Ling, and then looked at Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe before finally looking at the mysterious youth, swallowing her saliva and asking, How many? About 70 or 80? The youth thought for a while and said casually, I didn't count carefully. About 70 or 80. Why don't you go to heaven? Hong Ling, in the Tao Association, is there such a person? Ling Feng quietly asked Hong Ling at this moment. This youth used an ancient sword and did not look like a shifter. Hong Ling shook his head blankly. Just as everyone was frightened by the terrifying strength of this youth, the youth suddenly said, It's good that you are all okay. Get ready to leave this place. Leave? Song Jinshui's eyes lit up at this time and quickly said, You know the way out of here. I don't know how to leave. The youth shrugged and said, Anyway, there's a way to let you leave. But Chu Xinghe still kept an eye on this. Although this mysterious youth was terrifying, no one knew him. She hesitated for a moment and braced herself. Why should we believe you? As the young man listened, he revealed a rather troubled expression. Just as he was about to speak, an old voice came from behind him. Mr. Taisetsu, let this old man do it. He saw a white-haired old man slowly walking over, and beside this old man, there was an exceptionally strong man, Baijia Daoist and Huang Baifu. Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe were shocked at the same time. Greetings, Secmaster. Hong Ling quickly walked out from the crowd at this time and bowed to Baijia Daoist. She was once sent to Kunlun to learn martial arts, so she had the identity of a Kunlun disciple. Ling Feng and Hong Ling were slightly happy. Baijia Daoist was a person of virtue and prestige, and Huang Baifu was known as the strongest young demon in Kelowna, so they were more or less confident. There's not much time. Listen to me first. Baijia Daoist walked to the front of the crowd. Everyone, this old man has found a way to leave, but time is short, so I hope you can leave now. Baijia Daoist, why are you with Huang Baifu? Song Jinshui frowned. And you found a way to leave. During the time we were separated, did you find something? Baijia Daoist glanced at Song Jinshui, Huang Baifu. Wang Hu snorted. Song Jinshui, just leave when I ask you to leave. Why so much nonsense? I tell you, you only have one chance if you don't leave. Don't blame us if you can't leave. Huang Baifu you. Song Jinshui, believe it or not, I'll beat you until you're like your old man, hanging on a pillar and unable to move up and down. Wang Hu sneered, clenching his fist and walking towards Song Jinshui. You can try. Song Jinshui's eyes shone like he wanted to eat someone. A pair of short horns appeared on his head, and his demonic energy boiled all over his body, causing his aura to soar crazily. This posture is not bad, but I wonder how many punches you can take. Wang Hu was still sneering. Damn, I've met so many people I can't beat, but this time, I finally met someone I can win for sure. So touching. Stop arguing. Baijia Daoist glared and said in a low voice, We've already suffered heavy casualties. Do you still want to kill each other in this dangerous place? The time we can leave is limited. I don't want to see any more casualties. Listen, this time, our Kelowna Daoist and Demon Realm has suffered heavy losses. Do you really want to see our Kelowna Daoist and Demon Realm completely fall before you feel at ease? After all, this was an old man with a higher seniority than anyone present, the president of Kelowna Daoist Association, the sect master of Kunlun, could indeed suppress Wang Hu's arrogance and Song Jinshui's anger. You're right, Daoist. Chu Xinghe's eyes swept across the crowd and finally stopped on Taisetsu. Leaving is indeed necessary, but Daoist, don't you want to introduce this expert to us? If there's a chance, I'll explain it to you clearly. Baijia Daoist took a deep breath. I'll open the way for you to leave immediately. Next, there are still some people who are separated and may be in danger. I must find them as soon as possible. President Baijia, Captain Ling Feng suddenly said, Is time really so tight? This place. But before he finished speaking, Baijia Daoist had already interrupted. Ling Feng, I know what you're thinking, but I advise you not to have any ideas about this place. Although it doesn't sound nice, this is not a place that you, or even the country behind you, can touch. Ling Feng frowned. Because of these weapon-like girls? But it's not like we don't have any chance of winning. This one, He also looked at Taisetsu at the same time. Ling Feng, should I say you're loyal or stupid? Baijia Daoist smiled bitterly, and then his voice deepened. I'll say it one more time. Leave immediately. Captain Ling Feng was silent. Hong Ling looked over silently at this time. Captain Ling Feng finally sighed. Since President Baijia has said so, then I can only listen. But I won't hide what happened here. I hope Daoists can personally come to the administration and explain to us old leaders. Don't make it difficult for me. But some of us went in, and it will take some time to come out. I will. If there's a chance, I will. Baijia Daoist nodded. Ask your men to come out as soon as possible. Captain Ling Feng nodded, walked to a team member, and whispered. Ask them to come out immediately. But ask them to bring out as much as possible from inside. Just say that this is an order. The team member was stunned, then understood, nodded immediately, and ran to the back. At this time, Taisetsu walked slowly to Wang Hu was at odds with Song Jinshui, and asked curiously, Brother, why do they call you Huang Baifu? Wang Hu was stunned. Then he braced himself and said, Huang Baifu is my real name. Oh, I see. Taisetsu nodded, then asked, What about Wang Hu? This is Wang Hu. Huang Baifu said softly, Stage name. Taisetsu nodded again, then rubbed his chin. Huang Baifu. This name is a bit hard to pronounce. You should be called Wang Hu? Then it's decided. I am a young master of White Tiger, Huang Baifu. I also think that Wang Hu is a good name. I'll be called this from now on. Not long after, the exploration team walked out with a puzzled look on their faces. At this time, 100 Tribulations Daoist looked at Taisetsu and said seriously, You can open the passage. Okay. Taisetsu nodded. Then he waved the Zhanlu sword in his hand, and a crack appeared in the air. The crack opened quickly, revealing a distorted space. Everyone leave, 100 Tribulations Daoist said seriously. Remember, never come back here. Although 100 Tribulations Daoist was so serious, here came the question, who would enter the distorted space first? After all, everything happened too suddenly. But at this time, footsteps came from outside the cave. A black-haired young man walked in slowly. After the black-haired young man appeared, 100 Tribulations Daoist's face changed slightly, while Taisetsu stood silently beside the young man. Luochio, Boss Luo. 100 Tribulations Daoist frowned and called out, Old sir, I'm sorry. At this time, Luo Chio said indifferently, I'm afraid not everyone can leave here. Among them, there are people who are outside the scope of your request. They don't belong to the Divine Land Dao world or the Divine Land Demon world. This 100 Tribulations Daoist was stunned and frowned. Among these people, many of them studied in the Dao world sects or were sent to the various large demon clans to train. No matter what, they are considered half-Dao demons. Their learning and training can only be considered as exchange students, but they don't belong to the Kelowna Dao world. Luochio said calmly, they don't belong to the Kelowna Dao world. They are outside the contract. Boss Luo, do you really have to make such a clear distinction? To you, opening the passage is just a piece of cake. Chapter 1078. It was very quiet in the cave. 100 Tribulation Taoist silently looked at the tough boss. He suddenly found that it was not only quiet, but also dead quiet. 100 Tribulation Taoist suddenly realized, except for himself, the boss and Taisetsu, all the people here, including Huang Baifu, Song Jinshui, and Chu Xinghe, didn't move at all. They seemed to have become statues in an instant. 100 Tribulation Taoist was shocked. He was frightened because they were not only unable to move, but also stopped thinking. The content of the deal couldn't be leaked. The club wouldn't leak the content of the deal, but if it was the client who leaked it, the club wouldn't consider it. So, at least at this moment, when Luochio was here, everything stopped. If there's no problem, let's start to send the relevant people away. Seeing 100 Tribulation Taoist didn't say anything, Luochio wanted to end the brief explanation. Sir, wait a minute. 100 Tribulation Taoist frowned, saying sincerely, Is there really no way to manipulate it? Boss Luo, the rules must be made. Of course, there would be situations that could be changed, and there must be loopholes. Every life here is so precious. Luocio quietly looked at 100 Tribulation Taoist's eyes. After a while, he slowly said, "It can be manipulated, but I don't know if you will choose it." 100 Tribulation Taoist hurriedly said, "Please." Well, in view of the content of the service you bought, there are two main aspects. First, evacuate all the Taoist and Monster Clan members here safely. Second, we won't do it indefinitely, so there's a time limit, 36 hours. So, by shortening the time I serve you and increasing the number of evacuees, what do you think? 100 Tribulation Taoist couldn't help but fall into meditation. The agency's appearance here was out of 100 Tribulation Taoist's expectation. He didn't even know that apart from the Taoist and Monster Clan members, even the agency was involved in this place. Then, apart from the agency, were more people involved because of the spiritual Chi J Dragon Pillar? Could 36 hours of service be enough to evacuate all these people safely? If the service time was shortened and the agency was evacuated safely, would there not be enough time to evacuate others? Was there anyone else? If they were to evacuate the people from the administration now, would the club be able to successfully evacuate all the Dao demons within the contracted area in a short period of time? Or, because the service time was shortened, some Taoist and Monster Clan members who could be rescued were out of service time? Tribulation Taoist couldn't help frowning. No, even if the service time was shortened and Monster Clan members were added in the contract, the club could evacuate all the Taoist and Monster Clan members here. The key was whether there were any other people here other than the agency and the Dao demon. What if they couldn't evacuate these extra people after the service time was up? But why was there a service time limit rule? 100 Tribulation Taoist looked at the young owner again. He couldn't read any meaning from the owner's expression. The power of this shop owner was completely beyond 100 Tribulation Taoist's imagination. He even felt that this shop owner could evacuate all the Taoists in this place in an instant. However, this shop owner added a period of time to his service, which was also counted as part of the deal, and he had to pay for it. Profit. Suddenly, the 100 Tribulations Taoist figured out the key point. The other party had the ability to complete the task in an instant, but the extra service time meant that the service fee would be higher. Why did Boss Luo tell him this? Could it be that he was reminding him that the extra profit could be recovered in some way? Wang Hu had said before that this person was a sincere person. It seemed that this was true. The Tribulation Taoist's brows gradually relaxed. Luocio said softly, "Old man, you've made up your mind, haven't you?" The Tribulation Taoist nodded solemnly. "I am willing to shorten the service time so that the agency can evacuate safely." "I see." Luocio nodded, but suddenly asked, "But before that, I'm curious. Why did you make this choice?" The Tribulation Taoist said quietly, "Boss Luo, let's not beat around the bush. You need to make some profits, or you can't do this business. All businessmen in the world want to make profits. I know that. Boss Luo has reminded me about the possibility of the service time. How can I not know? Your mission is not to work for free. I'm not reluctant to do it. So, thank you, Boss Luo." "I see." Luocio nodded and didn't say anything more. They'll be able to move soon. This exit will last for 10 minutes. If you want to say something, just tell them. I won't disturb you. Luocio walked out of the cave as he spoke. Taisetsu scratched his head and followed him out. After Luocio and Taisetsu left, the time in the cave seemed to start flowing again. Seeing Luocio's back as he left, the Tribulation Taoist faintly felt that something was wrong. But time was too short, and he couldn't catch that flash of light. At this moment, Hong Ling's eyes blinked, and Huang Baifu. Wang Hu's eyebrows also frowned. Everyone's chests began to rise and fall again at this moment, and some people began to take a step forward. The still world instantly became a world that could move. What happened just now? Song Jinshui asked Chu Xinghe in a low voice. Chu Xinghe glanced at them in confusion and found that Mr. Taisetsu had disappeared. It seemed that another young man had appeared just now. His memory seemed to be a bit blurry, but the distorted space exit was still there. At this moment, the Tribulation Taoist sighed and said seriously, Everyone, don't waste time. This exit can only last for 10 minutes. Everyone looked at each other, and no one was the first to step out. Finally, the administration sent someone to test it. One of the team members was the first to cross the passage. He went in, but came back after a few minutes and said happily, "We can really go out. Captain, I can see Mount Tai. Let's go out." Captain Ling Feng nodded and didn't hesitate anymore, and arranged for everyone to leave. Outside the cave, Luochio looked at the metal machines of those people who were busy clearing the weeds in the forest. No one knew what he was thinking. Taisetsu hesitated for a moment, then walked up and asked in a low voice, "Boss, you seem a bit unhappy." Luochio smiled slightly. "There's nothing to be unhappy about. It's just a business deal." Taisetsu was stunned and asked confusedly, "Boss, I don't understand. Why did you remind the Tribulation Taoist that the time can be shortened?" Luochio shook his head. "Actually, I didn't mean to remind him. Maybe he misunderstood, or maybe I didn't express it clearly enough." Then, "Boss, what do you want to do?" Luochio looked at the mountain in the distance and whispered, "I just want to know how he will choose to save those in front of him and those in the future." Then did he choose a wrong one? No. Luochio shook his head again. "In fact, there's nothing wrong with the choice. What's wrong is the choice itself, right?" Luochio then smiled. "Well, let's not talk about this now. After the Tribulation Taoist comes out, let's go to the next place." After passing through the exit, they appeared near a granary outside a small village. They didn't disturb anyone, especially the villagers who were working in the fields. It seemed that the exit had been carefully selected. Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe didn't choose to stay. They had experienced a terrible disaster. Even though the time was short, they felt like it was a lifetime ago. But they didn't choose to leave here immediately, because it was very likely that the next batch of evacuees would appear here. Song Jinshui and Chu Xinghe also wanted to know whether their clansmen had survived the disaster. What? How is it possible? But at this moment, Ling Feng's face suddenly changed. This made everyone's eyes converge on Ling Feng, who was holding a mobile phone and was stunned on the spot. After coming out, Captain Ling Feng immediately contacted the headquarters of the administration. "What happened?" Hong Ling asked hurriedly. Captain Ling Feng frowned at this moment. His face was full of disbelief. They said, "Today is the 15th day of the first lunar month." What? They went on New Year's Eve, but it felt like only 2 or 3 hours had passed. 500 years. Gongsun Wu and the charming and lazy woman in the light ball suddenly stood up. Perhaps because their eyes were too intimidating, Jiang Zhuo subconsciously leaned back. The light ball seemed to be able to sense Jiang Zhuo's thoughts, and at this time, it also slowly moved back. "Junior, are you telling the truth?" Gongsun Wu's face was extremely solemn. Jiang Zhuo said solemnly, "Seniors, I can even swear to my deceased master that every word I said is true and not false at all. In fact, before I came in here, it was the Lunar New Year of 2018 outside, which is 500 years away from the time you said." The charming and lazy woman and Gongsun Wu looked at Jiang Zhuo without saying a word, which made Jiang Zhuo break out in cold sweat. Although he knew that they were also trapped in the light ball, he still felt a chill on his back. What level of Taoist cultivators were these two people at? After a long time, the charming and lazy woman slowly exhaled, faintly saying, "I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace. Well, it seems that this place and the outside world are the same as the heavenly earth." Gongsun Wu didn't answer, but sat down with his legs crossed and closed his eyes. In Jiang Zhuo's opinion, this senior must be overstimulated and couldn't calm down. But thinking about it, hundreds of years had passed in the blink of an eye. Looking back, things were still the same, but people had changed. The familiar places had changed. The ancient people in the past might have turned into the yellow soil, leaving only him. Alas, these two seniors were quite pitiful. Jiang Zhuo sighed secretly in his heart. Unexpectedly, Gongsun Wu slapped his thigh, his face full of joy. "Damn, 500 years have passed. Most of my former enemies are probably dead. I don't have to do it myself. This feeling is F*** comfortable." Jiangzhua. The charming and lazy woman also chuckled. Wu, you idiot. You have no ambition. Why don't you think about it? 500 years have passed, you and I are already in the generation of ancestors, with extremely high seniority, maybe at the level of ancestors. The rules of the clan, the rules of the sect, all of them go to hell. Jiangzhua. What happened to the seniors and masters? No. I can't wait to go out when I think that I will be an ancestor when I go out. The charming woman frowned at this time. It's a pity that we can't break this broken light ball. Do we have to stay here for a few more years? At this time, Gong Sunhua suddenly slapped towards a light ball. Jiangzhua didn't see any shocking momentum with this slap. It was more like slapping a mosquito, but the light ball suddenly flashed a few times at this time. At this time, Gong Sunhua frowned at this time. This thing seems to have become weaker. The charming and lazy woman was surprised at this time. However, at this time, as if to prove Gong Sunhua's words, the space suddenly became bright and dark. Jiangzhua was shocked, but at this time he suddenly felt a pulling force. His body was suddenly pulled down, and at this time, the light ball that protected him was broken in an instant. Therefore, Jiangzhua fell to the ground. Wait, the ground? Jiangzhua raised his head. In front of him was a three-dimensional space made of metal on all sides. Where was the chaotic space he saw before? It's so strange. I have never seen this situation before. Gong Sunhua looked at this metal room at this time. For these years, have we been trapped here, in this metal box? This may be some kind of advanced space technology. Jiangzhua frowned at this time. Climbing up at this time, a special space is created in this metal room. I remember Gaia said to start the protection program. Maybe this is used to protect the so-called subscribers when there is an attack outside. But why does this special space disappear? The charming woman looked at Jiangzhua at this time, puzzled at this time. Jiangzhua muttered, assuming that a huge amount of energy is needed to maintain this special space. When the machine you made has a fault, or if there is a problem with the energy supply, maybe it will stop. At this time, suddenly, this metal room rang out suddenly. The energy supply will be restored in 30 seconds. Subscribers don't need to worry. The protection program will be restarted. Please wait patiently. At this time, the surroundings of this metal room began to vaguely change at this time, as if it was going to return to its original chaotic state again. Damn it, I don't want to be trapped again. Gong Sunhua snorted at this time. Over there. At this time, Jiangzhua's eyes were sharp. At this time, he saw something like a door flash and instantly pointed at it. Seeing this, Gong Sunhua raised his palm without hesitation. No one knew how he did it, but in a flash, Gong Sunhua's palm had already imprinted on the metal door. This metal door suddenly sank, and then with a bang, the entire metal plate more than 2 meters high flew out in an instant, and then revealed an exit. Gong Sunhua directly took a step out. At this time, the charming woman at this time didn't greet at all. At this time, her figure flashed and already appeared in front of the exit. Then she also took a step out. At this time, Jiangzhua at once at this time, he immediately followed at this time. But at this time, he felt very strange in his heart. The sudden stop of the protection space and the subsequent electronic explanation had confirmed his conjecture. The energy supply was insufficient. But the insufficient energy supply was too coincidental. How could the energy supply be insufficient not long after he came here? This situation was really like the situation of the Xia family city in the peak period, and suddenly the power supply was tripped. Chapter 1079. The carriage continued to run through the huge passageway. The wisps coming from the Black Bull's iron hoof illuminated the surroundings with a light green light. Xiao Xingmao suddenly pulled on the reins, causing the carriage to slowly come to a stop. At the end of the passageway was a fault. The interior of this mysterious tower buried underground was surprisingly hollow. In the middle of the empty space, there was a huge metal pillar. This metal pillar was slowly rotating. Although they were not close to it, Xiao Xingmao could already feel the terrifying energy emitted from this rotating metal pillar. Xiao Xingmao frowned, then pulled the reins in his hand again. and the carriage set off again, circling around the huge metal pillar and spiraling upwards. The mysterious small tower that sucked Long Shuo and the others inside was still quietly standing beside Xiao Shengma, not shaken in the slightest by the bumpy carriage. Ever since they were sucked into the small tower, they could barely sense the situation outside. This was the treasure of the Ghost City's city lord, Xiao Shengma, 10,000 Ghost Tower. According to legend, there was a space inside it that could absorb 100,000 ghost soldiers and ghost generals. Once activated, 100,000 ghost soldiers and ghost generals would come out, causing the weather to change, as if hell had descended. No one knew what was inside the 10,000 Ghost Tower. A place that could absorb 100,000 ghost soldiers and ghost generals would certainly be gloomy and terrifying. Unexpectedly, when Chichikamaya and the others opened their eyes, what they saw was not hell, but a quiet place with a winding path. There was a small bridge with flowing water and a cool breeze. It was like a paradise, making people feel relaxed and happy. This is the 10,000 Ghost Tower. Suddenly, Long Shuo's voice rang out. Chichikamaya and Ghost Child looked over at the same time and saw that Long Shuo had already stood up. Her originally pale face had become rosy. Presumably, it was because of the medicinal pills that Chichikamaya had given her, allowing her to recover. It should be. Chichikamaya nodded. Xiao Shengma's 10,000 Ghost Tower has always been mysterious. No one knows what's inside it. However, why did Xiao Shengma suddenly attack and trap us in this place? Long Shuo frowned and said, ever since Xiao Shengma became the Ghost City Lord, he basically never left Fengdu, Ghost City, except during the Penglai Conference. He's always been very mysterious. Let's go forward and see. I don't think he would send us in here for no reason. Rumor has it that there are 100,000 ghost soldiers and ghost generals in the 10,000 Ghost Pagoda. Are you afraid? The ghost child looked at him worriedly. Chichikamaya calmly said, others may be afraid, but your Lord Long won't be afraid. Shinryu's aura is Kelowna's most powerful and majestic power. It is the nemesis of all demons and monsters. The ghost child nodded and then carried the unconscious Luo dance on his back. It seemed that he was the only one suitable to do this. At this time, the faint sound of a zither came from the depths of the bamboo forest ahead. This made Long Shuo stunned and said subconsciously, what a cold zither sound. It seems that the zither sound wants to lead us there. Chichikamaya frowned. Long Shuo and Chichikamaya looked at each other, and then they resolutely followed the sound into the bamboo forest ahead. The bamboo trees were silent and fluttering. The zither sound was cold, but not sad. It was like the sound of understanding the world, lingering in the air. It was getting deeper and deeper. Long Shuo raised her hand and lifted a small section of bamboo leaves. She saw a touch of brown in front of her. It was an antique wooden house built in the bamboo forest. There was a pavilion outside the house. At this time, someone was sitting in the pavilion and playing the zither. The sound of footsteps began to disturb the sound of the zither. When Long Shuo and others were several meters away from the pavilion, the zither player stopped. He put his hands on the strings and slightly raised his head. Why did you lead us here? Long Shuo said in a low voice. Did you make the flute sound silent and lead us here? Who are you? Lord Long is still forgetful. The man's voice was slightly hoarse and old. At this time, he stood up and turned around. He looked like an old man. The old man had a benevolent look, like those immortals who didn't eat the food of mortals. Seeing this man, Long Shuo's eyes suddenly changed, and Chichikamaya was also moved. The old man nodded slightly. Long time no see, Lord Long and Mr. Turtle. It's you. Long Shuo's face was full of disbelief. Heaven's will. 70th generation. He's Heaven's will 70th generation? Ghost Baby looked at the old man in the pavilion in surprise and couldn't help but frown. It said that Heaven's will 70th generation had died in order to eliminate the Long Sha. How could he be here? This is Wangue Pagoda. Chichikamaya seemed to understand something at this time. He looked at the old man in the pavilion and frowned. Heaven's will 70th generation. Now you're just a ghost. The old man in the pavilion nodded, just as Mr. Turtle said, "Now I'm just a lonely ghost." "You're actually not completely dead." Long Shiraw took 2 steps forward. "That year, after stabilizing the Dragon Vein riot, I rushed to the battlefield immediately, but all I saw was your corpse. I couldn't find any aura. So you hid here with Xiao Shengma?" The old man in the pavilion, Heaven's will 70th generation, shook his head. "Not entirely. That year, after eliminating the Long Sha, my life was indeed cut off. My soul drifted outside and gradually dissipated. It was City Lord Xiao who saved me. He kept a wisp of my soul in Wangue Pagoda and nourished it with the ghost chi in Wangue Pagoda every day. Now, dozens of years have passed, and I gradually woke up. Heaven's will 70th generation. Since your soul is still here, why didn't you show up all these years?" Chichikamaya asked puzzledly. Heaven's will 70th generation smiled bitterly. "On one hand, my soul is very weak. These dozens of years have been muddle-headed. Thanks to City Lord Zhao's help, I've recovered a bit recently. On the other hand, the Longsha incident was caused by my evil disciple. I'm really ashamed to face Kelowna and the Taoist and Taoist realms. Now that I've survived, I'm already blessed by the heavens. How can I have the face to show up?" Gue Chini heaved a long sigh. Long Shirwa said indifferently, "That year, you risked your life to eliminate the Long Sha. Even though it brought disaster, it can be said that your merits offset your demerits. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Let's not talk about the past." Heaven's will 70th generation shook his head, then said seriously, "I'm in Wangue Pagoda. I'm indebted to City Lord Xiao and can know everything in the outside world. Lord Long, your situation isn't too good. If possible, please listen to me. Going too far is as bad as falling short. You'll get to let it go. You don't have to care about my matters." Long Shiraw snorted coldly. "Why did you leave me here?" Heaven's will 70th generation was silent for a moment. "Lord Long, do you know the origin of my plainclothes Tao?" Long Shiraw muttered. "The plainclothes Tao appeared mysteriously 2,000 years ago. They're proficient in the mystic sect physiognomy and can predict the heavens, the earth, and people. They don't miss anything. Every generation of the plainclothes Tao only has one official successor and has always been mysterious. However, when it comes to its origin, no one knows. It's strange. There are many people in the Tao world who know physiognomy, but they're not even 10 or 20% of the plainclothes Tao. Even I can't find your background. Lord Long, can we talk alone?" Heaven's will 70th generation suddenly said. Heaven's will 70th generation. What do you mean? Chichi Kamaya frowned at that moment. Ghost Child also looked over with an unfriendly expression. "There are some things that I can only talk to Shinryu alone. Mr. Turtle, I'm sorry." Heaven's will 70th generation said faintly, "Please leave." When this person was alive, he had an extremely important position in the Tao and demon realms of Kelowna. Due to the plain-clothes Tao's special ability, even the Xianyuan Palace had to be courteous to him many times. Although the successors of the plain-clothes Tao looked gentle and refined, the abilities of Feng Shui warlocks were too strange. No one knew when they would be plotted against if they offended these warlocks. Chichikamaya, you and Ghost Child bring Agile to the house to rest. Long Shirual waved her hand at that moment. Okay. Chichikamaya had no choice but to obey. When only Heaven's will 70th generation and Long Shirual were left in the pavilion, Heaven's will 70th generation made an inviting gesture and let Long Shirual come in and sit down. If the world knows that the great Shinryu of Kelowna is now just a child, I don't know how chaotic the Tao and demon realms of Kelowna will be. Heaven's will 70th generation shook his head. You asked me to stay alone just to make fun of me? Long Shirua's voice was filled with dissatisfaction. Heaven's will 70th generation shook his head. No, I didn't mean to make fun of Lord Long. I just mentioned this on purpose so that Lord Long won't be too surprised by what I said. Because I think Lord Long, who has seen that kind of power, can understand something. Long Shirual was stunned. She lowered her head and pondered for a while. Suddenly, her face changed slightly. Plainclothes Tao, is it related to that place? the founder of the plain clothes Tao actually didn't know anything about feng shui divination. Heaven's Will 70th generation slowly said. In fact, all feng shui divination was researched by the later generations step by step. The successors of the plain clothes Tao only had two kinds of abilities, the most basic abilities. Heaven's Eye and Heaven's Will. But in fact, Heaven's Eye and Heaven's Will were not created by the plain clothes Tao. They were obtained from other places by the first person of the plain clothes Tao. Long Shuo frowned. Legend has it that the plain clothes Tao has Heaven's Eye and Heaven's Will. Heaven's Eye can see through the essence of things, and Heaven's Will can see the past, present, and future. Heaven's Eye is still okay, but Heaven's Will can see the future? How much did the first person of the plain clothes Tao pay to obtain this kind of ability from the hands of that profiteer? Profiteer? Heaven's Will 70th generation said in surprise. Although I didn't come into contact with it personally, but according to the sect's secret records, it was mentioned that place is a fair trade and never forced. It can even be said that the person who bought it is forced to pay more. Since that's the case, how can he be called a profiteer? Anyway, you don't have to care. Long Shiro snorted coldly. I'm not here to discuss whether that fellow is a profiteer or not. Heaven's Will 70th generation shook his head, not intending to argue. Long Shiro inherited the power of Shinryu from Kelowna, but most of the time, it was just that Long Shiro's words were unpleasant to hear. Almost the entire Kelowna Taoist and Monster Realm knew this. But in fact, this should be something to be happy about. At least, this Shinryu who controlled Kelowna's most powerful power only had a sharp tongue and not a heart of steel. Let's talk about you. Long Shiro controlled her temper and asked with a frown, You said that Heaven's Eye and Heaven's Will were obtained from that place? That place already existed 2,000 years ago. In fact, I don't know how long that place has existed for. Heaven's Will 70th generation said, Our sect's secret scrolls have very little information about that place, and most of it is just our own guess. Long Shua shook her head. You purposely led me into the Wangui Pagoda to meet you just to tell me this? Lord Long, do you know where this place is? Peng Lai. Long Shua said with uncertainty. This place repeatedly appeared in her inherited memories, but there seemed to be some slight differences, so she was not sure. To be precise, this place is called Peng Lai Treasury. Heaven's Will 70th generation said seriously, Peng Lai Treasury is modeled after the current Peng Lai. Moreover, the foundation of Peng Lai Treasury is Peng Lai, and the real Peng Lai has already died. Speak clearly. Long Shirul was able to keep her composure. I don't know the exact reason. Heaven's Will 70th generation recalled. This is what the previous generation, which is Heaven's Will 69th generation, told me. Some of our sect's secrets are passed down by word of mouth every generation and never left in the secret scrolls. Speaking of which, the matter of the Long Sha came suddenly, and before I left, I did not have time to pass down this matter to my sect's disciples. If not, the current Heaven's Will 71st generation would not have done such a stupid thing to actually open the Peng Lai Treasury and trap Kelowna's Taoist and Demon Realm here. I'm afraid that the owner of this Peng Lai Treasury has already been alerted. Saying this, Heaven's Will 70th generation paused, looked at Long Shua, and said seriously, Lord Long, the following matter is a secret of our plain clothes sect. Now that the situation is serious, it is not the time to stick to the old rules, but I also hope that this matter is only known to Lord Long. Long Shua nodded. The owner of this Peng Lai Treasury is not someone from Kelowna Realm. Heaven's Will 70th generation said seriously, in fact, it is not someone from our world. It is very likely to be an invader from outside the realm. Outside the realm? It is said that there are many worlds outside the realm. Some are very similar to our world. Some are very different. Heaven's Will 70th generation said, I also do not know the exact number. In the sect's warning, it only said that no matter what, the owner of the Peng Lai Treasury cannot be awakened. Actually, the plainclothes sect has always known about Peng Lai, or the entrance to the Peng Lai Treasury, and also know how to open it. But these years, in order to comply with the sect's rules, every time during the Peng Lai conference, we would appear as sacrificial offerings to observe the entrance of the Penglai treasury, to see if there is a leak. Longshaw could not help but laugh coldly. No wonder you only let me know about this matter. I am afraid that if this matter was not leaked out, your coffin lid would be pried open. This Kelowna Dao and Yao realm, for the past 2,000 years, they have been deceived by your plain-clothes sect. Everyone says that Jianghu practitioners are actually Jianghu liars. These words are not wrong at all. Heavens will 70th generation pretended not to hear. The owner of the Penglai treasury is an invader from our world. We definitely cannot let it awaken. But there are mortals in Penglai. This caused countless people in both Dao and Yao realm to scramble like ducks. If not, this Penglai treasury would be opened by someone sooner or later. If the owner of this treasury were to awaken, I am afraid it would not be comparable to a dragon fiend calamity. I hope Lord Long can understand us. Then should I give you a Kelowna Outstanding Contribution Award, and then praise your hard work? Lord Long, don't mock us anymore. Heavens will 70th generation laughed bitterly. But he also understood that his sect had deceived the Dao and Yao realms of Kelowna for a full 2,000 years. If it was anyone else who knew, they would probably explode with anger. For so many years, the plainclothes sect had indeed received a lot of respect and courtesy from the Dao and Yao realms. One question. Longshaw's face darkened. If the owner of the Penglai treasury is an invader from outside, then how does your plainclothes sect know this, and even know about Penglai and the Penglai treasury? Naturally, it is because the founder of the plainclothes sect was also an invader from outside. Heavens will 70th generation said faintly, and back then, when he walked in the human world, he used the name Sufu. Chapter 1080. Sufu. Longshaw was surprised. The Sufu who found the elixir of immortality for the first emperor. Heaven's Heart's 70th generation nodded slowly. The secret that would only be revealed from the previous generation to the next generation was slowly being revealed at this moment. Sufu, or should I say Heaven Heart one, he came from the real Penglai. Skyheart's 70th generation said seriously. He was once a child under the real Penglai immortal. Back then, the owner of the Penglai treasury used some unknown method to kill the immortal of Penglai and took over Penglai. Using Penglai as the foundation, he created this Penglai treasury. The first generation of Tion Xian escaped, but from then on, he changed his name and roamed the world with the identity of Sufu. Later on, he was placed in an important position by the first emperor. As for the cloth sect, it was secretly formed by him during that period. No, something is wrong. Longshaw frowned and said, You said the owner of the Penglai treasury was an invader from the outside. I asked you how you knew, and you said this was information left by the founder of the cloth path, because this founder, Su Fu, also came from the outside, a world different from ours. And now, you said he came from the real Penglai. Which one is the real one? Or could it be? It is as you think, Lord Long, Heavenheart 70 sighed. For thousands of years, the Penglai that Kelowna chased after also came from the outside, or rather, it came from a place higher than the outside. I don't understand. Longshaw shook her head. Heavenheart 70 said, Our cloth path believes that the world is not one, but is made up of countless similar worlds. You mean world fragments? Longshaw frowned. Tion Xian Generation 70 shook his head. It's not a world fragment, but a complete world. For example, in another time and space, there's also China, and there's also you, Lord Long, and there's also me. There's also China, and there's also other countries. It's just that their development may be completely different from ours. In fact, in that time and space, there's also you, Lord Long, but you don't exist as the true dragon of China. You might just be an ordinary person. Parallel space-time? You can say that. Heavenheart 70 nodded. Actually, the theory of parallel space-time has been around for a long time, but in the past few decades, it has become popular in the mortal society. Then, Penglai, it may come from another space-time, but it is more likely that it is in a parallel space-time. Heavenheart 70 paused, as if he was considering his words. After a while, he said, For the time being, let's call the world formed by many main worlds the Greater Thousand World? Although I'm not sure if it can be called that, but it seems to be the most appropriate. It seems that the word dimension has appeared in modern times. But I don't really understand the so-called dimension, so for the time being, let's call it the Greater Thousand World. He looked at Long Shu. In the Greater Thousand World, it is known that there are countless you, me, and him. But you, me, and him are independent of each other, but there are some connections between each other. This is more like the possibility of development because of a fork in the road, because of different paths chosen. For example, if a person is faced with a choice, the right choice will lead to a good result, and the wrong choice will lead to a bad result. Then, there will be a world with a good result and a world with a bad result. In this way, there are two different worlds. 70 generations, according to what you said, that is already infinite. Time is infinite to begin with. Heaven Heart 70 smiled bitterly. My linen Tao is good at calculation, but every generation can't find the limit of time even after spending their whole life. I'm afraid it is just a drop in the ocean. The changes in the world every moment. I'm afraid it is not something that can be seen through simple calculation. But we believe that in the Greater Thousand World, there's one thing. Just like the truth, it is the essence, it is the origin. Everything is inseparable from it. Punlai, maybe this one. What do you mean? Once it becomes the one, it can be separated from the Greater Thousand World. Heavens will Generation 70 said. Becoming the one and only, the countless individuals in the Great Thousand World will thus be unified. Based on our cloth-closed past conjecture, perhaps the deities and immortals we know of have already become the one and only. After unifying the countless me's in the Great Thousand World, they reached an even higher level. Higher? Tian XN Generation 70 frowned and said, regarding this part, we have been researching for a long time, but we have never been able to come to a definite conclusion. In fact, even in my generation, we have only been able to deduce some vague traces. That is, the Great Thousand World might be a fragment of a certain place, something that was cut out. Our main world may be a fragment of a higher world. Long Shaw digested it for a while, then rubbed her forehead, shook her head, and said, let's talk about this in the future. Or back to the question now. Why did you ask me to come here? Heaven Heart 70 said, Heaven's Eye and Heaven's Heart were obtained by my founder from Punlai. But in fact, Heaven's Eye and Heaven's Heart were also obtained by the immortals of Punlai from that place. According to the first generation of Heaven's Will, every single individual who became a unique individual would automatically obtain the right to pursue the inheritance of that place. However, it seemed that in the entire process, one would need to go through countless tests. There was more than one unique individual, and it was not easy to stand out from the many others who had qualified. At least, the immortals of Punlai failed in such a competition. They were defeated by those who coveted them, and finally died. No, that place already has a boss. What do you mean? It seems that when the rightful successor is still on the throne, the other qualified people can only obtain a lower level of power, or called it a substitute. Heavens Will 70 frowned and said, but in reality, it is very difficult for us to know what kind of form this is, unless, when we become the only one and unify countless eyes, perhaps we will be able to obtain some enlightenment. Longshaw shook her head. According to what you said, that is also after becoming the one and only. The owner of the Punlai treasury wants to wake up to become the one and only. The founder of your cloth sect was a child under the immortals of Punlai, and the immortals of Punlai died in a battle with the owner of the Punlai treasury, thus forming a grudge. I can understand the reason why the cloth sect has been guarding the Punlai treasury all these years. But in fact, whether the owner of the Punlai treasury wakes up or not is only because of the grudge between him and your cloth sect. It has nothing to do with Kelowna, right? Heaven Heart 70 said, what if the one and only way to become the one and only is to sacrifice everything in the world? Whether it is Kelowna or outside of Kelowna, the main world we are in will become the only resource for the owner of the Punlai treasury to become the one and only resource. Sacrifice, using the whole main world as the only resource to become the one and only resource. Subconsciously, Long Shuo thought of that place, the place where everything could be bought, sacrificing the whole main world to become the one and only in the big wide world. It was hard for her to doubt Heaven Heart 70's words, because if it was that place, it was very likely that someone would spend everything in the main world to become the one and only. What should I do? Long Shuo asked directly. Heaven's Heart is not complete. Heaven Heart 70 said, from the very beginning, Heaven's Heart was divided into two parts. The owner of the Penglai treasury has a part of Heaven's Heart, which can let him know the development direction of the main world. That is to say, he can peek into the future. In this way, he can basically avoid the situation where he will fail. Only by taking away part of Heaven's Heart from him and making him unable to see the future can we defeat him. Long Shuo stared at Heaven Heart 70. You are really something. The owner of the Penglai treasury comes from outside the territory and can even kill the Penglai immortal who has become the one and only. You want me, a small Kelowna Shinryu, to stop him? You really think highly of me? Actually, it is not. Heaven Heart 70 said. The Penglai immortal seems to have suffered an irreversible injury in the process of fighting for the rightful successor of that place. His body became abnormally weak, which gave the owner of the Penglai treasury an opportunity. In fact, the owner of the Penglai treasury is also not well. He must have been seriously injured. Otherwise, my bypath would not have been able to guard the entrance and exit of the treasury all this time and be safe. Xiao Xingma, Long Shuo suddenly said, is Xiao Xingma helping you? He also knows all of this? Tian Exen, the 70th generation, said, I only told him that there's an ancient devil sealed in this Penglai treasure vault. It must not be allowed to awaken. Otherwise, a calamity will befall Divine Prefecture. City Master Xiao is a warm-hearted person and immediately agreed to help me get the other part of Heaven's Heart from the treasury. However, this Penglai treasury is full of danger. City Master Xiao alone might not be able to complete it. Lord Long, this is the reason why I let City Master Xiao send you into the 10,000 Ghost Pagoda. Long Shuo suddenly sneered. That Xiao Xingma saved your lonely soul and used the 10,000 Ghost Pagoda to heal you. You are good, saying that the ancient demon wants to destroy the world, and you tricked him. Your bypath is really good. You casually talk nonsense, and people believe it. Heaven Heart 70 could only say, City Master Xiao is also one of the pursuers of Penglai. If this is confessed, it will inevitably involve the things that the Bai Path has done in the past few years. Right now, the Cloth Sect is in imminent danger because of the 71st generation's outrageous acts. If we really want to be exposed this time, Lord Long, although I only have a wisp of remnant soul left, I still took over the position of Heaven's Heart 71st generation. I don't want the sect's legacy to be severed like this. Besides, if the owner of Penglai Treasury wants to become the only one, he does need to sacrifice the whole world. This is also a fact. It is not nonsense to say that he is a demon and wants to destroy the world. Long Shuo still sneered. But can you just tell me? Heaven Heart 70 said seriously, Lord Long only cares about the balance of Kelowna. Taking a step back, does Lord Long really want to see the current Penglai and the Taoist and Demon Realm reach Penglai? The current generation is the generation of People Dao. As the embodiment of Kelowna's dragon vein, you should know better than anyone. Once the Taoist and Demon Realm recovers, it is equal to going against the fate of Kelowna. For you, what benefits do you have? Why not let Penglai become a legend and give the Taoist and Demon Realm an unreachable but persistent dream? Let them have fantasies and not be completely demonic? I think Lord Long should know more about the art of equalization than I do. What a charlatan! What a charlatan! What a great charlatan! Long Shuo snorted, standing up and leaving in a huff. Lord Long, Heaven Heart 70 hurriedly stood up. Still not letting Xiao Xingma let me out? Long Shuo turned back, saying angrily, Do you want me to break this broken tower by myself? I won't pay for it. Heaven Heart 70 let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that he agreed. Passing through the clouds, Everything looked hazy in the misty clouds. Zhuefeng was actually tired of this aimless climbing. Brother Mo Xiaofei was in front without saying anything. However, as they climbed higher and got closer to the peak of this huge mountain, Brother Mo Xiaofei emitted a kind of aura that made Zhuefeng uncomfortable. It was like a tumbling sea with stormy waves, but his expression became calmer. Anger. Wind-chasing Wolf could feel the anger from Brother Mo Xiaofei, as if it was real. On the winding mountain road, the huge rocks turned into dust the moment Brother Mo Xiaofei walked past. The surrounding clouds were stirred up crazily, as if there was a demon dragon stirring up trouble in the sea of clouds. Zhuefeng swallowed his saliva subconsciously. At this moment, he had to use Greedy Wolf's supernatural power to barely keep up with the pace of Brother Mo Xiaofei. This road became extremely long, and it was deathly silent all the way. Zhuefeng even forgot about the world. He didn't know how long he had been climbing, but he felt all the pressure disappeared in an instant. However, in a split second, an even greater anger erupted from Brother Mo Xiaofei, like a volcanic eruption. The surrounding clouds were tumbling violently at this moment. It was actually the sound of thunder and lightning. Zhuefeng raised his head abruptly. Brother Mo Xiaofei had stopped at this moment. They had unknowingly walked to the peak of this huge mountain. Gazing into the distance, they saw a majestic palace in front of them, resplendent and magnificent. Mo Xiaofei roared angrily at this moment. His body rushed up to the sky and crashed into the huge, majestic palace. Brother? Zhuefeng screamed in horror. He had to catch up with him hurriedly. Mo Xiaofei passed through the gate of this majestic palace. The entrance was as huge as the gate of heaven. People here were as humble as ants. A gust of wind blew all the way into the depths of this majestic palace. In the end, Mo Xiaofei stepped into the depths of the majestic palace. A loud noise came from the place where Mo Xiaofei stepped on. At the same time, the entire palace trembled slightly. Right in front of Mo Xiaofei, there was a huge, bright crystal. In this crystal, a figure with disheveled hair could be vaguely seen. Zhuefeng focused his vision and saw that the person in the crystal was missing a left wrist. Brother, who's this? Chapter 1081. The Zhanlu sword was invincible. The combat-type Gaia was like a stationary target in front of it. When Taisetsu easily cut open a combat-type Gaia, he couldn't help but stop because of this deep sense of dissonance. However, the 100 Tribulations Taoist and Wang, who didn't have time to think too much about Taisetsu's problem. After sending off the bureau and Tsang Jin Shui, they immediately rushed to other places. This time, the main executor of the service that the 100 Tribulations Taoist had bought was obviously Taisetsu. The amount that the 100 Tribulations Taoist could pay was not enough to ask the boss to do it personally. However, Taisetsu was also very efficient. For example, he immediately found a few more survivors and sent them out one by one. Now, the person he met was a demon. This demon did not belong to the 4 heavenly spirit clans. He was a pheasant demon and called himself Daffy. He had always been a loner, but his strength was not weak. Among the demons, he was also a senior great demon. Relying on his special ability, he survived that disaster. Under Huang Baifu's persuasion, Daffy agreed and left the Penglai treasure vault through the emergency exit. I didn't expect so many to survive. After sending this demon away, the 100 Tribulations Taoist suddenly had a relieved smile on his face. He originally thought that, apart from himself and the people from Ming-Tu Mountain, there wouldn't be many survivors. Apart from Tsang Jin Shui and the others, we only found a total of 5. Wang Hu laughed bitterly. He didn't know what the 100 Tribulations Taoist meant by many, but he felt that this many was filled with a kind of bitterness. 100 Tribulations Taoist, the rescue target in the contract, is no longer outside. Taisetsu suddenly walked over. Boss asked me to tell you that the rest are there. Taisetsu pointed at the towering mountain in front of them. Boss is waiting for us there. Actually, how could the 100 Tribulations Taoist not know that there might not be more survivors. After all, he was the one who buried the dead Taoists and demons with his own hands. Back when Yulongzhu moved everyone to the Penglai treasure vault, the 100 Tribulations Taoist already had an idea of how many were left. He only needed to compare them with the ones he had buried personally to figure out how many were left. There is no time to lose. The 100 Tribulations Taoist didn't give himself any time to feel melancholy. He said seriously, "Mr. Taisetsu, let's go and meet with Boss Luo now." Okay. Taisetsu nodded. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Wang Hu suddenly frown, and his expression became a little strange. Taisetsu couldn't help but ask curiously, "Brother Wang Hu, what happened to you?" However, Wang Hu merely touched his abdomen. Then, he shook his head in confusion and said, "Nothing. Maybe I'm just hungry. Oh, I still have some vermilion fruits. Do you want some?" Taisetsu blinked. "No, thanks." Wang Hu shook his head. He just felt that his stomach was suddenly stirred and then calmed down. Let's get down to business first. In fact, according to the service content of the deal with the club, there was another operation. Actually, they could send everyone out together after finding them. However, the 100 Tribulations Taoist immediately gave up this idea after meeting Ling Feng and the others from the administration. The service content was to evacuate the Taoists in the Penglai treasure vault safely. That was to say, before the evacuation, the Taoists would be in a safe state. Following Boss Luo meant that they were safe. Unfortunately, although the Penglai treasure vault was extremely dangerous, it was a treasure vault as its name suggested. Treasures were everywhere, which could easily make people restless. The 100 Tribulations Taoist couldn't explain everything to everyone, so he could only send everyone away when he saw them. However, in fact, there were still some who had guessed part of the content and stayed. For example, the alien woman named Jessica and Yu Sanyang, who had changed her name to Qin Chiyu. They stayed with Luoqiu all the time. When the 100 Tribulations Taoist and Taisetsu walked around outside and sent away the scattered survivors and met with Luoqiu, Jessica and Qin Chiyu were still there. As for Su Zijuan, when Su Zijuan left, the 100 Tribulations Taoist and Wang Hu weren't there, so they didn't meet. The 100 Tribulations Taoist didn't know the existence of Su Zijuan. As for the alien woman named Jessica, the 100 Tribulations Taoist really wanted to ask Luoqiu why she was a Taoist and Taoist of Kelowna. However, this alien woman named Jessica seemed to have a close relationship with Boss Luo. At least, in the 100 Tribulations Taoist size, this Jessica didn't show much restraint when talking with Boss Luo. They seemed to be having a good conversation. As the saying goes, the older you get, the wiser you become. The 100 Tribulations Taoist easily noticed the unusual relationship between Jessica and this Boss Luo, so he didn't ask about Jessica's background. As for Qin Chiyu, well, this heavenly fox who had gotten rid of her monster body through the club hundreds of years ago, even if she didn't buy the service content, she would probably be fine. Boss Luo, the 100 Tribulations Taoist walked over quickly. Have you confirmed that there are no other survivors of Taoist and Taoist world outside? Elder, shouldn't you know better? Luoqiu answered with a smile. 100 Tribulations Taoist knew that the other party was talking about the fact that he had personally buried the corpses of the elites of the Taoist and demon world. 100 Tribulations Taoist immediately sighed. I heard from Mr. Daz that the only one left is in that mountain. Yes, almost all of them are there. Luoqiu raised his head and looked up. But at this moment, the earth suddenly shook. The line of sight was moving up and down rapidly because of the shaking. The surface of the huge mountain in front of them suddenly cracked open and fell down from the mountain. What the hell? The 100 Tribulations Taoist was startled. He felt that something terrible was brewing in that mountain. At the same time, the clouds in the sky changed color, as if a dragon was stirring in the clouds. Elder, Taisetsu will follow up with the rescue. Don't worry, Luoqiu suddenly said. Then, I'm sorry that I can't follow you all the way. Boss Luo? The 100 Tribulations Taoist frowned at once. But Luoqiu ignored him. He walked straight to Jessica and said in a low voice, Are you following the 100 Tribulations Taoist or me? Facing Luoqiu's question, Jessica was stunned at first, but then she answered without thinking, "Of course it's you." Su Zijuan didn't ask much of Jessica. She just didn't want her to die. As a position, Jessica estimated that, facing such a choice, Su Zijuan would choose to go with Luochio without hesitation. "Miss Jessica, please come to my side," Miss Maid said to Jessica with a faint smile. After that, Luochio looked at Qin Shiyu and asked, "Miss Qin, how about you?" Qin Shiyu didn't say anything, but walked straight to Miss Maid. Then, the Hundred Tribulations Taoist and Luochio separated again. A light covered Luochio, Yi, Jessica, and Qin Shiyu, taking them to fly away in a flash towards the top of that mountain. President Hundred Tribulations, although I don't know what happened, I have a feeling that something is going to happen. Wang Hu frowned. The most important thing for us now is to evacuate people. Indeed. Hundred Tribulations Taoist nodded, looking at Taisetsu. "Please, Mr. Taisetsu." Taisetsu shrugged. "Don't mention it. It's just a job. We'll charge you." After saying that, Taisetsu took the lead to walk forward, followed by the Hundred Tribulations Taoist and Wang Hu. In the Myriad Essence Pool, the battle-type Gaia was paying attention to the many monitors in front of it, including the progress of the special combat type Valkyrie Gaia that was being printed in the Myriad Essence Pool. Completion, 78%. Intruder detected. This combat type Gaia brought up 4 different screens at the same time. On each of the screens, there were 4 different people. On one of the screens, a gloomy man was driving a carriage pulled by a black bull. It was Xiao Shima. On the other screen, there was a group of people who were moving forward cautiously. They were the people from Mingtu Mountain. As for the third set of images, there was only one girl. She was currently outside the behemoth that was buried deep underground. When the image was focused on the girl, she was ruthlessly thrusting her hand into the surface of the metal tower. Then, she lifted the metal plate on the surface and barged in with brute force. The fourth screen was Jiangzhua, Gongsun Wua, and the charming girl who had escaped from the protective space. Detecting unregistered species cleaning. Lesia's internal defense system activated. Detecting 3 subscribers, detecting behavior, subscribers' abnormal behavior, advising. The new batch of battle-type Gaias didn't go out through the gap. Instead, they rushed out of the metal door in front. The power of Gongsun Wu's fist was terrifying. Every punch broke the metal wall that blocked the way. It even reminded Jiangzhua of Huang Baifu's fist. Jiangzhua wondered how Gongsun Wu's fist compared to Huang Baifu's, who was known as the strongest tiger among the 4 spirit clans. Phew, it feels so good. Gongsun Wu rotated his arms and loosened his neck, making the sound of bones cracking. "I'm finally free after being trapped in that damned place. Even so, don't destroy it casually, senior." Jiangzhou didn't have the strength to complain. He finally realized that these 2 seniors had a strange way of thinking, and their personalities were hard to grasp, so he had to be careful not to say anything wrong. But he still had to remind him, "Senior Gongsun, why don't we keep a low profile? It'll be bad if we attract Gaia here." Unexpectedly, Gongsun Wu laughed and said, "Kid, you shouldn't know, right? Those Gaias were basically massacred by Tai Bai, so this place is like an empty city." Jiangzhou had to remind him again, but Gaia is being printed in the Myriad Essence Pool, and we don't know how many have been produced. "It's okay." Gongsun Wu smiled and said, "Although the attack of these things is frighteningly high, it's actually not very strong. Unless it's a big guy, ordinary people will just die no matter how many of them there are." Big guy? Jiangzhou couldn't help but be stunned. After leaving the protected space, he had no way of knowing the situation in the Myriad Essence pool room. I think it's called Wa something class. The name is too hard to remember. But it seemed that when one's luck was bad, it was completely unreasonable. At this time, a Gaia appeared directly in front of Jiangzhou. Discovered. Looking at the battle-type Gaia floating in the middle of the passage, Gongsun Wu frowned directly. "Warning, dear subscriber, please return to the protected space to ensure your safety." At this time, Jiangzhou subconsciously looked at Gongsun Wu and the charming woman beside him. and found that these two seniors seemed to be indifferent to Gaia's warning. Warning, dear subscriber, please return to the protected space to ensure your safety. Okay. At this time, Gong Sun-woo was expressionless as he nodded and agreed directly. Then, he walked in front of the Gaia and said directly, "Lead the way, I forgot the way back." Confirm. However, the moment Gaia turned around, Gong Sun-woo suddenly jumped up and punched the back of the battle-type Gaia's head. The power of this punch was indeed amazing. With one punch, the battle-type Gaia's head was instantly blown apart. The Gaia's body exploded instantly after its head exploded, and there was a sudden gust of wind in the passage. At this time, Gong Sun-woo turned around and laughed loudly. "See? I told you it's easy to kill. So powerful." Jiang's was swallowed his saliva. "Damn it. So shameless. Warning, dear subscriber, please stop your illegal acts of destruction and return to the protected space. Otherwise, you will be judged as a criminal, your subscriber qualification will be revoked, and you will be eliminated." However, at this time, another Gaia flew into the passage. Not only one, but two more followed, making a total of 3. Warning, so annoying. But before the Gaia finished its warning, its head was directly twisted off by Gong Sun-woo. He directly threw the head of the Gaia on the ground, and then laughed sinisterly. "I finally came out, and I will never go back to that damned place. You puppets die for me." Facing Gong Sun-woo's fist, the remaining 2 Gaias reacted instantly and entered battle mode. The passage instantly became a fierce battlefield. Don't worry too much. Woo is a brute. If he can solve something with his fist, he will never use his brain. At this time, the charming woman looked at the worried Jiang Zhua and smiled slightly. "Moreover, don't you think this is a good opportunity?" Opportunity? Jiang Zhua was shocked. At this time, the charming woman smiled and said, "This place is basically under the management of these Gaias. Previously, when Taibai made a big fuss, it basically put this place in a state of stagnation. That's right, the so-called universal can indeed continuously produce Gaias, but it also needs time. And most importantly, the one operating it should be the one that you accidentally activated. So as long as this Gaia is destroyed, these puppets will not continue to be produced." Then, Jiang's was suddenly understood the charming woman's meaning. At this time, he heard the woman squinting at him and said, "Is there a need to say? Gong Sun and I have been trapped here for 500 years. 500 years. We have lost too much. So naturally, we have to take back the capital with interest. Senior, I have a feeling that this matter is not so simple." Jiang's was shook his head. He didn't know whether this woman and Gong Sun-woo had such an idea because of their superior ability or because they knew something else. But Jiang's clearly felt the gap between this place and the outside civilization, and he had a feeling that this place was not so simple that only a broken artificial intelligence was left to manage it. As the saying goes, wealth comes from danger, the charming woman suddenly said. The higher the risk, the higher the reward. Junior, if this place could be captured so easily, then it wouldn't be valuable. Although that is true, Jiang Zhua frowned. But I have a feeling that such a rash advance is contrary to the nature of a Taoist. Shouldn't a Taoist abandon the mentality of seeking wealth and risk? Isn't it better to be safe? Junior, what are you talking about? At this moment, Gong Sun-woo turned around. No one knew when the battle had ended. At this time, Gong Sun-woo's hands were holding 2 Gaia's heads, one in each hand, and laughed grimly. Did you make a mistake? We were demons that everyone wanted to kill in the past. In the universal pool, 4 huge printing arms were operating crazily at this moment. The printed object was at least 7 meters tall. Special combat type Valkyrie-class Gaia. Chapter 1082. Bang! Su Zijuan, who believed in simple, direct, and violent principles, punched on a wall of this huge metal lump. The metal plate quickly caved in after bearing the power of this punch. Finally, it couldn't bear the heavy burden and broke open a jagged gap. Su Zijuan frowned and walked in. This damn place was much bigger than she had imagined, and the metal used to build it was unexpectedly hard. However, she finally succeeded in breaking into this place. Su Zijuan looked around. Undoubtedly, the internal structure of this place was very complicated. However, when Su Zijuan was about to move forward, some strange boxes quickly appeared beside her. The boxes floated in the air. Unknowingly, dozens of boxes had gathered around Su Zijuan. Suddenly, these metal boxes, which were only the size of 2 fists, split open from the middle. A red bead was exposed in the middle of the split. The bead flashed instantly, and a red light rapidly shot out from the bead. A large amount of flames appeared around Su Zijuan because of the light beam. These dozens of metal boxes were crazily attacking at this moment. After more than 10 seconds, these intensive attacks stopped. When the flames dispersed, Su Zijuan stood there with cold eyes. Beside her, there was a clenched huge palm made of demon power. This palm clenched tightly, blocking all the attacks of the metal boxes outside. Dozens of metal boxes flew around Su Zijuan again, and soon changed their formation. A new round of attacks seemed to be about to begin. TSK, I originally wanted to save some strength. Su Zijuan snorted. Since I've been discovered, then I'll be more violent. The huge palm made of demon power suddenly stretched out from Su Zijuan's side and directly pushed out like a torrent. The metal boxes in front of it exploded, and at the same time, the metal wall in front of the passage was also directly broken by this palm. Su Zijuan chuckled and chose to directly rush in. At the same time, unlike a certain rich girl, this trip to the Mingta Mountain was obviously much more difficult. The beam of light released by the sudden appearance of the metal box pierced through the shoulder of one of the survivors from the Tao Association. The tremendous power caused this member of the Tao Association, who was an elite disciple of a certain sect, to lose his arm from his body. Although these metal boxes could release powerful light beams, it wasn't difficult to destroy them. After working together to clear this wave of metal boxes, they thought the crisis was over. But unexpectedly, there were more than dozens of metal boxes. The walls began to open, and rows of metal boxes appeared in front of the eyes of the Mingtum Mountain, Immortal Huanyang, and the others, making them all gasp. This forced them to jump up and down, wondering if it was the right choice to sneak into this place. However, the metal boxes chasing behind them didn't leave them any time to discuss. Damn it, we should go out first. If we continue to go deeper, I'm afraid we'll run into greater dangers. It was not easy for them to escape. They thought that they could find a way to leave by exploring the edges of the underground, but they did not expect to barge into this mysterious place. Seeing that this place was also extremely dangerous, the survival team really did not have the mood to continue exploring this colossus. However, this huge thing was as complicated as a maze, and with the weird and terrifying metal boxes chasing behind them, Immortal Huanyang, and the others had long lost the way to enter this place. They couldn't even tell whether they were approaching the outside of this huge thing or going deeper into it. The member of the Taoist Association whose arm was broken at the beginning had lost a lot of blood, even though the wound had been sealed with a special technique. Right now, his face was pale, and he was faintly exhausted. Hang in there, it's not easy to get here, don't give up. Immortal Huanyang could only hurriedly encourage them. Don't let President Baijia's sacrifice go to waste. In their opinion, Baijia Taoist master, who had returned alone to look for survivors, was probably dead without any news after such a long time. Over here, everyone! At this moment, among the surviving Taoist and demon team, a demon suddenly inserted his hands into the floor of the tunnel and lifted up a huge metal plate, blocking most of the tunnel. The metal boxes didn't hesitate to blow up the metal plate blocking the way. However, Immortal Huanyang and the others were nowhere to be seen in the tunnel after the explosion. These metal boxes flashed a few times and then began to disperse in the surrounding tunnels. At this moment, somewhere in this complicated tunnel, in a room with a small gap that wasn't completely closed, Immortal Huanyang and the others carefully concealed their presence. They're gone for now. They slowly heaved a sigh of relief, and only now did they remember to size up this temporary hiding place. They didn't know how long they could hide in this place, and they were extremely worried. And right before their eyes, the hiding place appeared incomparably strange. At the very least for this survival team, everything in this room was extremely shocking. Rows of huge circular glass tubes were neatly arranged in this room. The room was dim, and they couldn't see the area of this place. They began to approach these densely packed glass tubes and found that there was a pedestal-like thing under the tubes, and the tubes were filled with some kind of liquid. Some of the glass tubes had nothing but liquid, but some were soaked in things, or in other words, some creatures. Some had the head of a human and the body of a snake. Some were covered with fish scales, some were strange birds, some were walking beasts. While dazzling, they also inexplicably felt a bone-chilling coldness. These things stored in the tubes didn't show any signs of life, just like specimens. Gradually, they walked past the huge tubes one by one, and the more they saw, the more frightened they became. At this moment, Immortal Huanyang let out a cry of surprise and stopped. The others had no choice but to stop with Immortal Huanyang and looked at the tube that Immortal Huanyang was looking at. Inside the tube was a naked male. His chest was rising and falling slightly, clearly different from the strange specimens in the other tubes. At least it proved that this male was alive. But this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was they recognized the male in the tube. Flamestream. This was the Vermilion Bird Clan member who was knocked unconscious by Chu Xinghe before the tragedy of Team Annihilation happened. Why is he here? Immortal Huanyang couldn't help but frown. Was he captured and brought to this place? Immortal Huanyang seemed to have guessed the truth and said with a solemn expression, "This place is extremely strange, and the creature in the tube is unheard of. Was this Vermilion Bird Clan member captured and brought here for some experiment? No matter what, let's save him first." Immortal Huanyang said with a serious expression. Maybe he knows something. Immortal Huanyang didn't object, but this tube looked like glass, but it was different from normal glass, and Immortal Huanyang spent a lot of effort to cut this tube open. The liquid instantly flowed out from the opening, and Flamestream in the tube was also washed out by the liquid. Immortal Huanyang hurriedly checked Flamestream, but when his hand touched Flamestream's arm, he was surprised. Why is his body so cold? The Vermilion Bird Clan's attribute was fire, so they should be full of fire energy. Immortal Huanyang had never seen a Vermilion Bird Clan member with such a cold body. Elderming, check this guy's injuries, Immortal Huanyang said. We'll check the situation here. Immortal Huanyang nodded, and the group split up. Some continued to explore this huge room, and some walked to the entrance, paying attention to the movements of the metal tubes outside. In the passageway, 3 of the 4 Gai Yans were killed by Gong Sunwu's fists. As for the 4th Gai Yan, he was cut into countless pieces for some reason when he approached the charming woman. What Jiang Zuo could see was the charming woman's faint smile and cold-blooded appearance. Along the way, the number of Gai Yas who died in the hands of the 2 seniors who called themselves Great Devils from 500 years ago was close to 40. But this also confirmed what the 2 Great Devils said before. These Gai Yas were no threat to them. However, Jiang Zuo had a strange feeling. These 2 seniors seemed to be very familiar with the structure of this place. They seemed to be rushing around randomly, but Jiang Zuo had a feeling that they were going deeper and deeper. When they faced the fork, they didn't hesitate at all. They seemed to have a strong purpose. Seeing this small group of Gai Yas being destroyed, Jiang Zuo couldn't help but ask, "Seniors, you seem to be very familiar with this place?" The charming woman turned around and smiled. "If you were trapped for a few years, you could only observe to pass the time when you were bored. Even if you memorized the map, you could memorize it." Jiang Zuo blinked. Gong Sunwu said directly, "When you were trapped, didn't you know that you could see the situation outside through the light curtain? The light curtain can be adjusted. When Fan Xing and I were bored, we kept observing this place, so we roughly know the structure of this place." Then, "Oh, so this coquettish female devil's name is Fanxing?" The charming woman, Fan Xing, said, "It's very simple. When we were exploring, we found that there were several places that we couldn't see. They seemed to be protected. So, these places must be important places. Maybe we can find something from them. This direction leads to the nearest place that we couldn't explore at that time. Jiang's had a feeling that things wouldn't go so smoothly, but the two seniors were terrifyingly powerful. Jiang's trembled all the way and could only agree with Gong Sunhua and Fan Xing. They talked about how to stay safely beside the two devils. But in fact, the development of things was far beyond Jiang's imagination. Things were unexpectedly smooth, super smooth. The three of them soon arrived at the so-called relatively close place. Without a word, Gong Sunhua used the simplest method to break in. He didn't care that he would cause a huge commotion and attract Gaia's attack. But later, Jiang's thought about it. Perhaps their movements were always under Gaia's control. Otherwise, those Gaias wouldn't have come to their door one after another. Thinking about it this way, there seemed to be no need to hide it. Is there anything good in there? At this time, Fan Xing shouted to the inside. Gong Sunhua was standing at the gap of the broken metal door, blocking their view. Bad luck. There's nothing in this damn place. Gong Sunhua shook his head and stepped aside, letting Fan Xing and Jiang's in at the same time. In front of them was pure white, empty and simple. There were only a few things in the middle. A pedestal, a cylinder that seemed to be used as a control, and a crystal pillar connected to the pedestal. Is there something in the pillar? Jiang's furrowed his brows, trying to get a clearer view as he approached the crystal pillar. Gong Sunhua and Fan Xing also approached at the same time. It seems to be a dog. Gong Sunhua stood in front of the crystal pillar, looking at it carefully. Is this dog made of iron? The three of them continued to size up the dog inside the crystal pillar. They found that the metal dog inside the crystal pillar was very strange. Its eyes were wide open, and it seemed to be alive. Its mouth was slightly open, and it had a confused look on its face. It seemed to know something. Gong Sunhua knocked on the crystal pillar casually, frowning. Old dog, what are you looking at? Do you know me? I don't. But before he could finish his words, the metal dog in the crystal pillar suddenly covered its mouth with its paws, looking frightened. Oh, this weird dog can talk. Fan Xing looked at it with interest, then reached out and touched the crystal pillar. At this moment, the crystal pillar was broken into pieces. The moment the crystal pillar was broken, the trapped metal dog rushed out without saying a word, but was caught by Gong Sunhua before it could get out completely. What did you say? Me? Gong Sunhua held the metal dog in front of his eyes. The metal dog covered its mouth in panic, kicking its hind legs in the air, trembling. This metal dog seems to know something. Jiang's muttered. Seniors, since this weird dog is trapped in this secret place, it must be closely related to this place. We can't let it go. But it doesn't seem to talk. Gong Sunhua frowned, then threw the metal dog on the pure white floor. The metal dog's joints made a whining sound. Gong Sunhua stepped on the metal dog's abdomen with a little force. Old dog, answer me. What are you doing here? What do you know? If you don't talk, don't blame me for melting you. Metal dog, Tai Yinzi, was shivering at this moment, and he was wailing in his heart. Oh my God, Gong Sunhua, Gong Fan Xing. Why are these two devils here? Didn't these two fellows get hunted down by Master for 3 years? Didn't they finally die? I can't let them know that I'm Huanjin Dao's disciple. Still not talking? Gong Sunhua snorted, lifting his leg slightly. Tianzi was frightened. Don't step on the egg. I'll tell you. But Gong Sunhua stepped on it. Oh, I couldn't control myself. Woof. Tianzi dead. Special combat type Valkyrie Gaia.